Chapter 1907. Quietening down, Jianchen caught the space ring that the Grand Imperial Protector had thrown at him and checked its contents with the senses of his soul. There were only two types of things in the space ring: divine crystals and pills. However, there were mountainous piles of both divine crystals and pills. There were many of them, and they were stacked neatly together. Even Jianchen became amazed at the quantity of the mountainous pile of divine crystals. There are probably 100 billion divine crystals here, or even more than that, Jianchen marveled secretly. Even though he was used to seeing a lot of divine crystals, he was still amazed when he saw such a tremendous sum. The only pity was that all the divine crystals were low grade. As a result, once converted, they were only 1 billion mid-grade divine crystals or 10 million high-grade divine crystals. 1 million mid-grade divine crystals were equivalent to a block, so 10 million high-grade divine crystals were equivalent to 10 blocks of high-grade divine crystal. This was equivalent to the wealth of most overgod clans. The healing pills were just like the divine crystals. They were not of a particularly high grade, but they possessed quite the evident healing effects. The divine crystals were used to make up for the loss of the provincial city so that he could rebuild it, while the pills were clearly for the people who had been injured by the battle. Jianchen understood that the Grand Imperial Protector had come with these items on purpose. He had prepared them beforehand. After all, it was quite difficult to gather such a great number of resources in a short period of time. Jianchen fell silent for a while with the space ring in hand before saying, "Since the Imperial Protector himself has come asking for mercy, I'll let this matter be for now. Their lives are spared, but they cannot avoid punishment. Even if they're protectors of the Earth Spirit sect, they need to pay a price for destroying my provincial city." With that, Jianchen extended his hand and shot out 6 strands of sword chi towards the foreheads of 6 of the people around instantly. Each strand of sword chi was the size of a needle. Trapped, the protectors of the Earth Spirit sect were unable to dodge Jianchen's attack at all, let alone resist. The sword chi pierced their skin easily. It made its way through their foreheads and headed straight for their brains, injuring their souls. Arg! The 6 heavily injured protectors could not help but cry out painfully. They were all haggard and extremely weak. Jianchen had controlled the power of the sword chi perfectly. It would injure but not kill, wounding their souls. It would be extremely difficult for them to recover from this unless they had special heavenly resources or pills. However, both of those items were priceless. "You've actually injured our souls. Once our master arrives, he'll never spare you." The woman with the fan stared at Jianchen with resentment as she ground her teeth. The other protectors also looked at Jianchen with fury. Their gazes made them seem like they just wanted to eat Jianchen alive. The only protector who did not take part in the battle had become utterly frightened. He did not dare to utter a single word. Perhaps because he did not take part, but Jianchen did not target him specifically. Jianchen did not injure his soul. Afterwards, Jianchen released the restraints he had placed on them with the primordial god silk, allowing them to regain their mobility. The Grand Imperial Protector glanced at the black-clothed Shenjian deeply, as well as Master Chanlong, who stood before Kaiya in the provincial city. Afterwards, he left with the 7 protectors. Naturally, Weiner Yen did not stay. He left with the Grand Imperial Protector. He had stood up for his seniors and ended up heavily injured. He had to go tend to them, regardless of the reason. After seeing how the Earth Spirit sect had created such a great mess, the 2 gods of the Weiner clan did not remain in the city either. They followed Weiner Yen to the royal capital. The Dong'an province quietened down once again. However, the shockwaves of energy from the battle lingered in the sky. The fierce wind whistled loudly. Jianchen turned around to look at the damaged city walls. He could not help but sigh as he revealed a sliver of helplessness. At this moment, Mo Ling, Ando Fu, Nanyun Tong, and the other elders flew out from the city. They gathered before Jianchen and stared at him in admiration and reverence. Houston, Sacred Feather, Shao Jin, Shao Ling, Rui Jin, He Yu, Hong Lian, and so on all emerged from the forbidden grounds. They also gathered before him. However, Shangguan Mu'er did not appear. "Brother, are we just going to let them go like this?" Sacred Feather asked. He was extremely reluctant as a powerful battle intent radiated from him clearly. They're so bad. They've destroyed our home. Like a pitiful girl, Xiao Ling choked back her tears as her face was filled with sadness. The other people all expressed their sympathy regarding the matter sincerely. Our business with the Earth Spirit sect isn't over. Let's all go back first, Jianchen said to everyone. He knew extremely well that the greater the sect, the more prideful they would be. Now that the 7 protectors of the Earth Spirit sect had actually suffered defeat at the hands of an overgod clan in a backwater kingdom like the divine kingdom of Pingtian, they would never just let the matter stand. Today was only a start. Jianchen directly went to find Kaya in the provincial city. His feelings became extremely mixed when he saw Master Chanlong standing before her. He knew that if it were not for Master Chanlong's protection today, Kaya definitely would have been done for. Master Chanlong had saved her life today. Chanlong, no matter what, I must thank you for what you did today, Jianchen said to Chanlong. Master Chanlong was indifferent towards Jianchen's expression of gratitude. He said calmly, "It had nothing to do with you. I was only protecting my friend." Afterwards, Master Chanlong looked at Kaya, and his voice became much gentler. He said, "Kaya, the 3 armies of the Empyrean demon cult are about to attack the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Staying here isn't safe anymore. Why don't you leave with me? Chanlong, you may have saved Kaya, but don't even think about taking her away. Otherwise, I can only get you to stay as well." Before Kaya could respond, Jianchen cut into the conversation. He spoke forcefully, leaving no room for negotiation. He would never allow Kaya to leave with someone she had only met recently. Moreover, he always felt that Master Chanlong might have ulterior motives for befriending Kaya, who was only a saint emperor, while he was a mighty late overgod. Let alone the difference in strength, but they had even only known each other for so long. Moreover, Kaya possessed a 7-colored heaven-devouring beast that had followed her out of its own free will. He even suspected whether Master Chanlong had recognized what it was, which was why he was interacting with Kaya actively. Jianchen, I must admit that your strength is greater than the past, but keeping me here is impossible if I want to leave, Master Chanlong responded forcefully without any fear. Chanlong, Jianchen, stop arguing. Kaya hurried to stand between them after sensing the atmosphere between them was becoming more and more intense. She was afraid the 2 of them would begin fighting. Chanlong, thank you for saving me. However, Jianchen is the most important friend in my life right now. I won't leave him, Kaya said seriously. Master Chanlong stared at Kaya with interest. After a while, he finally sighed gently, "Fair enough. Since you choose to stay behind, I won't force you to leave with me." Master Chanlong no longer said any more after that. He turned around and made his way out of the city, leaving the Dong'an province. Jianchen just watched him leave and did not stop him. Regardless of what he had done in the past, Chanlong had saved Kaya's life. He could not continue attacking him anymore. It really is strange though. I clearly haven't seen you before, but why do I feel a sense of familiarity? Kaya still felt extremely puzzled as she looked at Master Chanlong's back. She returned with Jianchen to the Tianyuan clan with a slight bit of confusion. Chapter 1908, Elders of the Earth Spirit Sect in the Tianyuan clan. Jianchen called for a meeting with all the elders in the clan. He passed down orders for rebuilding the city and to provide relief before passing the space ring he had received from the Grand Imperial Protector to Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and Nanyun Tong so that they could handle the reconstruction. All the losses suffered by the stores this time would be repaid using the divine crystals from the Grand Imperial Protector. Also, even the injured people received healing pills. All of them were covered and different numbers of pills were given out depending on the injury suffered. In short, the items that the Grand Imperial Protector had given to Jianchen had all been handed down. There was nothing left of it, and the Tianyuan clan had to take out quite a lot of divine crystals and pills themselves. The Tianyuan clan had displayed meticulous concern for the citizens of the city as they handled the matter, so they immediately received much praise from the people. Everyone in the city felt respect and admiration for the Tianyuan clan from the bottom of their hearts. At the same time, the news of the battle between the Tianyuan clan and the protectors of the Earth Spirit sect, one of the 2 great sects of the Heavenly Moon Empire, had spread like wildfire. It led to quite a few discussions in many neighboring divine kingdoms and even reached the heavenly moon empire before spreading even further than that. Many people found the news to be just too shocking. Not only had an overgod clan from a divine kingdom repelled the attacks from 7 protectors of the Earth Spirit sect, but they had even achieved a glorious result and a fantastic victory. The patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Qin, was particularly impressive. He took on 2 late overgods from the Earth Spirit sect all by himself. Not only did he gain the upper hand, but he even achieved victory in an overwhelming manner. He had defeated his opponents without suffering any injuries at all. Many people believed that the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan already possessed the strength to make it onto the 3000 overgods plaque. As a result, Jian Qin gradually gained influence in the surrounding region. The overgods plaque recorded the 3,000 strongest overgods in the entire Saints world. It went across the 49 Great Plains and the 81 Great Planets. Once someone made it onto the plaque, they would directly soar to stardom. Many large organizations and sects would want to rope them in. Even a few extremely ancient organizations would be interested in recruiting them. Without any exaggeration, making it onto the overgods plaque would allow people to gain influence across the entire Saints world. Their name would appear on all the plaques on the 49 Great Plains and the 81 Great Planets. Everyone would know about them. Now that Jian Qin was rumored to possess the strength to make it onto the overgods plaque, he naturally attracted quite a lot of attention and discussion. Even a few large organizations had already taken note of him. However, in regards to the disturbance he had caused, Jian Qin had no idea about it. He had locked himself up in a gloomy room underground as he held a fist-sized monster core. He constantly absorbed the energy inside. This was one of the few overgod monster cores he had obtained from the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. Furthermore, he possessed a few cores from plants he had killed there, and they were also at the level of overgods. Jian Qin expected the future to no longer be as peaceful as before after he heavily injured the protectors of the Earth Spirit sect. Now that he had enough resources on him, he would naturally use the spare time he had to increase his own strength so that his chaotic body could break through as soon as possible. While Jian Qin was in seclusion, the reconstruction of the city progressed extremely smoothly. Many Origin Realm cultivators personally took part, and even a few deities helped out as well. They used their special techniques, so the city was repaired extremely quickly. In just 3 short days, 70% of the city had been repaired. At the same time, the royal palace welcomed 3 special guests. They were personally received by the Grand Imperial Protector, who smiled from ear to ear as he invited them in, settling them down in the well-decorated palace. Esteemed guests, I'll trouble you for now by having you stay in the Evergreen Palace. If there is any part that inconveniences you, you must bring it forward. The Grand Imperial Protector clasped his fist at the 3 of them. He smiled and spoke extremely politely. Thank you, Imperial Protector. The 3 people also clasped their fists back at the Imperial Protector. They behaved in an approachable manner, and they did not put up a haughty air at all. After leading the people to their residences, the Grand Imperial Protector left, while the 3 people entered the well-decorated palace. They saw the 7 protectors of the Earth Spirit sect standing there politely as soon as they entered the palace. 6 of them were still injured. Moreover, due to their souls, they were all pale and haggard. They gave off a sense of weakness. Apart from the 7 of them, Weiner Yen was also present. He stood with the 7 people. Disciple greets Master, Elder Ma, and Elder Fong. The 7 protectors and Weiner Yen all bowed. They were extremely polite, but there was also a sense of uneasiness within all that. Seeing them, the 3 elders from the Earth Spirit sect stopped being as amiable as when they faced the Grand Imperial Protector. Their faces sank rapidly, and they seemed furious. At the same time, they seemed to give off extremely tremendous presences. The 8 overgods before them all became frightened. You're all useless, the middle-aged man to the left said coldly. He stared at them with a sunken face and said in exasperation as if it was directed at their failure, there is a total of 8 of you. 8 overgods, each possessing the powerful battle skills from the sect. That is probably enough for you to even stand up to all the overgods in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, yet you were defeated by a mere overgod clan. Our Earth Spirit sect has been completely humiliated by you. Even the sect master has learnt of this. He's furious. Tell me, how should I explain this to him? Do I tell him that I'm useless? Or do I tell him you're useless? Or do I tell him your opponent was just too powerful? The faces of the protectors reddened with shame under the scoldings of the middle-aged man. They were just too ashamed, and they stood there in a daze without talking back at all. They knew themselves that not only had their failure humiliated themselves, but they had also humiliated the entire Earth Spirit sect as well as their master. Elder Mu, it has already happened. There's no use getting so angry. Moreover, your disciples are still wounded. You better have them recover first. Elder Ma, who stood in the center, spoke out for the disciples. The three elders were all middle-aged men, but Elder Ma seemed to be the leader among them. Tell me, is the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan really that skilled, that he can injure you like this? Elder Fong said as well. He spoke extremely gently, as gentle as the spring breeze. Elder Fong, Jianchen is indeed very strong. Although Protector Gong and I clashed with him several times, we completely failed to injure him at all. He basically completely overwhelmed our teamwork, and I feel like he didn't even use his full strength, Protector Wu said whilst bowing. Senior Wu is right. Jianchen is indeed very strong. I couldn't even take on a single attack from him as a mid-overgod. Moreover, Junior Yen could not even take on a single strike from him, even though he had just broken through to mid-overgod and comprehended the laws of strength. This time, the woman with the fan spoke. After that, she looked at Elder Mu as if she wanted him to help them. She said pitifully, "Master, Jianchen is completely loathsome. He pinned me to the city walls with his sword. You have to stand up for us. Please destroy Jianchen and the Tianyuan clan, Master. Although he's very powerful, he's only an ant before Master. Master would be able to crush him without any effort at all. Please, Master. Please avenge us and redeem the Earth Spirit sect," the other female protector asked as well. She understood very well that she was not Jianchen's opponent at all with her strength. She could only ask their master to help them now. Elder Mu snorted coldly with a sunken face. "And you still don't think you haven't embarrassed yourselves enough? You can't beat them yourself, so you want me, a mighty God King, to deal with an overgod. There'll be people criticizing us probably as soon as I wipe out the Tianyuan clan. Do you think that can redeem our Earth Spirit sect? Idiots." Elder Mu's chest heaved heavily from anger. He had even begun to regret taking them in as his disciples. A while later, after Elder Mu slowly calmed down, a vicious light suddenly flickered in his eyes. He said coldly, "However, the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan defeated you after all, and he made a joke out of our Earth Spirit sect, while he himself is benefiting from all of this. Since he's bold enough to trample over the Earth Spirit sect to elevate his personal fame, we have to make him pay a price. We just need to use a different method. The current divine kingdom of Pingtian is no longer the same as the past." Elder Fong nodded in agreement. He crossed his arms and said leisurely, "That's right. With our statuses, it's inconvenient for us to directly make our way to the Tianyuan clan. There'll be people making fun of us if we wipe out the Tianyuan clan like that. And the divine kingdom of Pingtian won't allow something like that to happen. We should use a method that does not involve becoming a laughingstock to wipe out the Tianyuan clan. After all, we're a famed sect in the southern region. How can we just let a nobody take advantage of us to propel his own renown?" Chapter 1909. Gathering of experts. Time passed silently, and the news of the arrival of the three God Kings from the Earth Spirit sect naturally was unable to stay hidden. The divine kingdom of Pingtian actively spread the news so that they could rid the unease from their countless citizens about the Empyrean demon cult's invasion. However, the arrival of the three God Kings also led to a fervent discussion. Many people discussed whether the three God Kings would personally stand forward to demand an explanation from Jianchen, who had injured their protectors. The entire divine kingdom discussed this matter. Everyone in the Tianyuan clan became heavy-hearted when they received this news. They immediately entered a high state of caution. However, The three god kings rarely appeared in the public after they entered the royal palace. At the same time, they did not behave as everyone had expected. They did not personally pay a visit to the Tianyuan clan. Everyone in the Tianyuan clan naturally let out a sigh of relief in response as they secretly rejoiced. As time went on, more and more large organizations sent reinforcements. They all gathered in the royal capital. From the Heavenly Moon Empire that was the closest to the divine kingdom of Pingtian, the other sect that was just as well known as the Earth Spirit sect, the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, had also sent 3 god kings. The imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire had also sent reinforcements. They sent 2 subjects that had arrived in luxurious carriages. They shot through the streets of the royal capital as a blur. The royal capital of the divine kingdom of Pingtian was now a gathering place of experts. Many large organizations in the southern region had sent reinforcements. Some of the citizens who stayed within the royal capital could clearly feel the suffocating pressure from the royal palace. It was daunting. Several days later, groups of special messengers left the royal palace with lightning speed. They hurried to the 6 great provincial cities to pass on the divine king's orders as quickly as possible and summon all the overgods. Naturally, the Tianyuan clan received orders from a group of special messengers as well, but they all became stuck in a dilemma. They all frowned. The patriarch is still in seclusion. What do we do? Do we disturb him? Mo Ling, Ando Fu, Nanyun Tong, and the elders all had no idea what to do. This was because before he entered seclusion, Jian Chen had specially ordered them to not disturb him unless the clan faced a situation of life or death. How can the summons of the divine king be more important than my brother's cultivation? His period of seclusion this time is extremely important. Don't disturb him. Sacred Feather emerged from the forbidden grounds at this moment and said coldly. He possessed a natural sense of pride, so he completely treated the summons of the divine king as nothing. But the divine king has ordered the patriarch to hurry to the royal palace within 3 days. If he doesn't go, Mo Ling and Ando Fu were troubled. If my brother doesn't come out of seclusion in 3 days, send a person to inform the divine king. Tell him that my brother is in a crucial moment of cultivation, so he can't go, Sacred Feather said firmly. This, Mo Ling and Ando Fu looked at each other. At this moment, Jian Chen sat in a secret room underground. He clenched a fist-sized plant core as he absorbed its energy and essence. This was already the 3rd core he had absorbed. The 2 before had provided him with extremely powerful and pure energy. His chaotic Niden had already reached the limits of the 10th layer now. He was close to breaking through. If my estimates are correct, as long as I absorb the core in my hand, my chaotic Niden will surpass its limits and explode. It'll be the time to condense the chaotic Niden for the 11th layer when that happens. Once my chaotic body reaches the 11th layer, I would have the battle prowess of a god king. Although it's nowhere near the level where I don't have to worry at all when I face off against the Empyrean demon cult, I'll be able to protect myself better at the very least. Jian Chen thought. He was slightly eager. However, in the next moment, he discarded his thoughts and completely devoted himself to cultivation. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye, and Jian Chen still had not emerged. Without any other options, the Tianyuan clan could only contact the people that they had already sent to the royal capital. At this moment, all the experts that originated from the various organizations of the ancient empires had gathered in a grand hall. There were several hundred of them, and all of them were overgods at the very least. Just the god kings among them amounted to over 20. With so many god kings gathered together, the presence they gave off was heavy and terrifying. The air in the hall basically felt frozen. Only overgods possessed the strength to remain there under such pressure. Gods would not even be able to approach the place. And this was with their presences concealed. Otherwise, if the terrifying presences of over 20 god kings merged together, the pressure would be so great that even many overgods would not be able to endure it. The god kings from the Heavenly Moon Empire only amounted to 8. The others came from 3 other ancient empires. 4 of the 6 ancient empires in the southern region had sent reinforcements. However, as the Heavenly Moon Empire was the closest to the divine kingdom of Pingtian, the Heavenly Moon Empire would be the most threatened out of the 6 ancient empires once the divine kingdom of Pingtian fell. As a result, the Heavenly Moon Empire had sent the most amount of people. Above them was the divine king, Pingtian. He wore his dragon robes as he sat on his dragon throne. He glanced at the experts below and thanked them all for coming with a calm smile. None of the god kings below put on any airs. They all smiled and exchanged pleasantries with the divine king extremely politely. They seemed to be fawning over him. I heard there's an impressive overgod from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. He easily defeated 2 late overgods from the Earth Spirit sect while they were working together. For the divine kingdom of Pingtian to possess a talent like that, it's difficult for you to not try to prosper. At this moment, a middle-aged man seated below spoke. He glanced at the 3 elders of the Earth Spirit sect with a smile that hid deep meaning. The middle-aged man had also come from the Heavenly Moon Empire. He was an elder of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, and his name was Songgu. It said that the 2 late overgods were 2 that were specially nurtured by the Earth Spirit sect. Not only did they possess powerful battle skills and impressive cultivation methods, but they were even a step away from God King as well. It's just a pity that these 2 overgods couldn't even injure him. I wonder who their master is, who is actually so useless that they can produce such lackluster disciples. A young man immediately followed up after Songgu. He looked in the direction of the Earth Spirit sect in provocation. The young man was also an elder of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds. His name was Chan Bufan. Haha, looks like the disciples of the Earth Spirit sect of this generation really don't possess much talent at all, or it's like what Elder Chang has said, their master is just useless. The 3rd elder from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds also added, and he too stared at the 3 elders of the Earth Spirit sect in provocation. The faces of the 3 elders became extremely sunken. Although they were like the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, one of the 2 great sects of the Heavenly Moon Empire, their relationship was nowhere close to amicable. They had always been secretly fighting with each other, trying to get the better of the other. Now that an opportunity had presented itself to the people from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, they naturally had to mock the Earth Spirit sect properly. Chapter 1910, Jian Chen Absent of. It said that Jian Chen possesses the strength to make it onto the 3,000 overgods plaque. Out of the countless overgods across the saints' world, there are only 3,000 of them. Every single one of them is extremely powerful among people of their own cultivation. They're all prodigies raised by those peak organizations. Although our Earth Spirit sect possesses some strength, that's only limited to the southern region of the Cloud Plain. How can we be compared to those supreme prodigies nurtured by peak organizations? Elder Mu from the Earth Spirit sect stood up and said sternly. As the master of the protectors, he needed to step up and say something in response to the scoffings from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds so that he could protect the pride of the Earth Spirit sect and his own to his greatest ability. Afterwards, Elder Mu stared at the 3 elders coldly and said with a sunken face, "If you feel my disciples are useless, you are most welcome to have the disciple you are the proudest of to spar with Jian Chen. Let's see whether your great disciples are Jian Chen's opponent or not. If your people can win, I'll admit my disciples are useless." That's right. You people from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds can't just talk like that if you don't have what it takes to back it up. You better get your own disciples to fight the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan first. It's not like it'll be too late for you to scoff at our Earth Spirit sect once you achieve victory. I just fear that the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds will lack that bravery because they know as well that even if they scour their entire sect, they won't be able to find an overgod that can defeat the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. Of course, that's unless you use many overgods to cast down a killing formation. Only then will there be a chance at victory, but our Earth Spirit sect can do something like that easily as well. The other 2 elders did not tarry. They both spoke out as well. With so many god kings gathered here today, they needed to stand up for the Earth Spirit sect. As a result, even though they were very reluctant, they had to describe Jian Chen's strength as worthy of making it onto the overgod's plaque. If the protectors of the Earth Spirit sect had been defeated by an expert from the overgod's plaque, it would not be embarrassing in the slightest. Let alone their Earth Spirit sect and the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, But even all the organizations that had come today did not possess a single disciple talented enough to defeat a person on the Overgod's plaque. However, the three elders from the Taoist sect of Calm Cloud burst into laughter instead when they heard the words of the elders from the Earth Spirit sect. Elder Song looked at the elders from the Earth Spirit sect like they were idiots and scoffed. Our Taoist sect of Calm Clouds is nowhere near as mighty as your Earth Spirit sect, purposefully becoming enemies with people on the Overgod's plaque. Our Taoist sect of Calm Clouds would much rather try to get on the good side of those prodigies, so why would we purposefully offend them? Only a brainless idiot would do something like that. The elders from the Earth Spirit sect turned crimson with rage as their fury rose from what Elder Song had said. Below, the protectors of the Earth Spirit sect also exhibited ugly expressions, as the trouble they had caused made the three elders suffer humiliation from the people of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds. They felt shameful and wronged. Patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, it's all because of you. I Chin Chun will remember you. I will make you pay 1,000-fold for the humiliation our Earth Spirit sect has suffered in public today, thought the woman with the fan stood within the crowd. Her eyes were extremely cold. At that moment, her hatred towards Jian Chen really had reached an unprecedented level. The experts in the hall watched on as if they were watching a show. The grievances between the Earth Spirit sect and the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds did not get in the way of their interests, so they naturally would not interfere with the matter. Moreover, none of them would ever offend an overgod on the Overgod's plaque for no reason, provided they did not get in the way of their interests too much. This was because if someone like that matured successfully, they would become a dominant figure in the saints' world as long as no accidents happened. There were quite a few people who had developed a deep interest in Jian Chen. I never thought that in just a few decades, Jian Chen would become someone who can make the Overgod's plaque. Weiner Yen was also in the crowd, gathered with the Overgods there. After hearing the elder's judgment of Jian Chen, he became extremely dejected. Oh right, I wonder if the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan is here. If you are, please show yourself. The three of us admire you greatly. Suddenly, one of the elders from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds said to the Overgods below. He smiled as he spoke politely, scanning through the crowd in the meantime. With that, many elders from powerful organizations focused their attention on the group of Overgods. They also became somewhat curious. Only the three elders from the Earth Spirit sect remained seated there with pale faces. They were furious inside. However, no one stepped forward under the gazes of all the elders from large organizations. At this moment, an elder of the Tian Yuan clan entered the hall under the lead of the Royal Divine Army. He reported to the Divine King that Jian Chen was unable to make it. With that, everyone seemed to understand why no one had stepped forward, and they no longer thought too much about it. However, the three elders from the Earth Spirit sect naturally developed hatred towards Jian Chen after they had been completely made fun of by their enemies, the people from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds. It was all because of Jian Chen's matter. Elder Mu immediately snorted coldly and said, Jian Chen sure is haughty. At such an important time, he's bold enough to miss the meeting. Does he think he's a supreme God King who has made it onto the God King's throne? He's looking down on the lot of us. Since Jian Chen possesses the strength to make it onto the Overgod's plaque, he'll definitely be extraordinary as well when he becomes a God King. He does have some right to look down on us. However, the Divine King clearly sent out orders 3 days ago, yet he still dared to not come. He's looking down on the Divine King, Elder Fong from the Earth Spirit sect said steadily. Not only had he antagonized Jian Chen against all the God Kings present, but he had also pulled the Divine King into the matter as well. The God Kings present all remained seated where they were. Their faces remained unchanged by what he had said. Naturally, they understood that the people from the Earth Spirit sect were antagonizing Jian Chen on purpose in an attempt to use everyone against him. However, with their identities and knowledge, it was impossible for them to be provoked by a few words and start acting just like the elders wanted them to. The Divine King on the throne waved his hand and dismissed the elder from the Tian Yuan clan. He did not become angered at all by Jian Chen's absence. He said calmly, since Jian Chen can't make it, let's just start the meeting. May I ask if you have plans against the attacks from the Empyrean demon cult? Chapter 1911. The Miracle with Kaya. Clearly, Jian Chen's absence did not affect the meeting at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of people did not even take note of it. Most of the experts gathered here today did not originate from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jian Chen's absence from such an important meeting was not disrespecting them but the divine king. After all, the divine king was the ruler of the divine kingdom. However, the divine king did not seem to care at all. He would definitely become displeased and maybe even furious if an ordinary overgod missed such an important meeting. However, Jian Chen held a special position in his heart. Time passed silently and unknowingly, half a month had already gone by. Everything with the Tianyuan clan in the provincial city remained the same. The fact that a war was about to erupt at a fortress on the boundaries of the divine kingdom of Pingtian did not seem to influence the place much at all. However, everyone in the clan was on their highest state of vigilance. They could activate the formation in the forbidden grounds at any time. At this moment, a tremendous pressure suddenly permeated the forbidden grounds of the clan. In a single instance, it engulfed the entire place before rapidly expanding further. At this crucial moment, the formations in the forbidden grounds activated. They stacked upon each other and covered the entire place, firmly locking in the powerful presence within the forbidden grounds. In the forbidden grounds, everyone who had come up from the lower world had already gathered together. They were staring at the person they had encircled, Kaya in her blue dress, with shock and disbelief filling their faces. The appearance of the presence had drawn their attention immediately. Only then did they look away from Kaya and stare towards the depths of the forbidden grounds, at the door that led straight underground. "Brother has broken through again," Sacred Feather murmured in delight. "Big brother is emerging from seclusion. Will he leave the clan again after that?" Xiao Ling said reluctantly. Everyone immediately departed for where Jian Chen would emerge. They all felt eager, wondering just how great Jian Chen's strength would become after this breakthrough. After all, Jian Chen was already able to achieve invincibility among overgods before he had broken through. It had even been rumored he could make it onto the overgod's plaque. In the very depths of the forbidden grounds, the door slowly opened and finally revealed Jian Chen. He had now formally reached the 11th layer of the chaotic body. His entire body possessed explosive power. This power gave Jian Chen great confidence. He was now bold enough to directly stand up to God Kings. God Kings were peak existences within divine kingdoms. In a huge divine kingdom, there would only be a handful of God Kings. Even in ancient empires, God Kings were great people who could act as they wished. Now, Jian Chen felt like he was powerful enough to take on God Kings. Perhaps due to the fact that he had just broken through, but he was unable to contain his presence as he wished, so a tremendous pressure radiated from him. The pressure was so powerful that the air around him seemed to freeze. Many people outside the secret room even found it difficult to breathe, as if they were suffocating. It was as if they were not facing a person right now, but an imposing, unscalable mountain. Just facing it made them feel insignificant. Is he an overgod or a god king? At this moment, the same thought crossed the heads of many people. In particular, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu were amazed when they saw the current Jian Chen. They had basically watched Jian Chen grow from a puny saint ruler in the past to his current level. "Jian Chen, you finally emerged. Check Kaya quickly," Shengguan Moore said with a sense of urgency as well as some shock and disbelief. Jian Chen immediately looked at Kaya after that, but in the next moment, his pupils narrowed suddenly and disbelief filled his face. "How is this possible? Kaya, you've gone from a saint emperor to reciprocity in the span of half a month," Jian Chen cried out as if he had just seen a ghost. Half a month ago, Kaya was still a saint emperor, but now, she had actually managed to break through receival and returnance to arrive at reciprocity. Moreover, she was at late reciprocity. Jian Chen felt like he was dreaming when he thought about her speed. He found it rather difficult to believe. Kaya was also very doubtful about how she could cultivate so quickly. She said as she wondered, "I don't know what happened either. I just discovered that cultivation was extremely easy once I woke up. I didn't encounter any bottlenecks, and I absorbed the origin energy in the divine crystals extremely quickly as well." I can drain a divine crystal in just a few seconds. Maybe it's because you ingested all those heavenly resources? The only reason that Jianchen could think of after Kaiya's elaboration was that she had ingested a god-tier heavenly resource. However, the Void Cloud Flower's greatest effects were to heal the soul, while its effects on increasing cultivation were almost insignificant. Kaiya's strength should not have soared so drastically. Moreover, even if the Void Cloud Flower could increase cultivation, it was impossible for it to be so quick, making a Saint Emperor reach late reciprocity in just half a month. Alright, Jianchen, I've already grasped the power of laws. If it were not for the fact that I ran out of divine crystals, I think I would be a deity already, Kaiya continued. With that, the power of laws gathered and coiled around her. It caused her to flicker with black light as the laws surrounded her. This is the laws of destruction. Jianchen cried out in a daze. He was in disbelief. Jianchen was not the only one. When Kaiya's laws appeared, everyone nearby became dumbfounded. They stared at the laws of destruction that coiled around her in a daze as their hearts churned. God-level laws. How is this possible? Jianchen was taken aback. At that moment, the shock he felt had peaked. In just half a month, not only had Kaiya's cultivation increased by an unbelievable amount, but her even comprehension of laws had progressed beyond belief. The power of laws was the key to godhood. In the saints' world, there were countless origin realm experts who would get stuck at this stage, unable to comprehend the laws of the world even if they devoted their entire lives to it. This was more than enough to illustrate the difficulty of comprehending laws. However, not only had Kaiya comprehended laws so easily, but the laws of destruction she currently displayed had also completely exceeded the levels of deities. It had reached the levels of gods. If this managed to make it out, even the entire saints' world would be in shock, let alone the cloud plane. Kaiya, how did you do it? How did your comprehension of laws suddenly reach such a level? Jianchen asked as his heart trembled. I don't know why. I just naturally grasped the laws when I cultivated. Kaiya was puzzled as well. Chapter 1912. Charging to the front lines, you just naturally grasped the laws. Jianchen was stunned and amazed. It was of the utmost difficulty for other people to comprehend laws. It was extremely difficult for even Jianchen to make any progress with his laws of the sword. However, from Kaiya's words, it seemed like comprehending laws for her was an extremely easy matter that did not require any effort at all. Even the prodigies raised with the full support of great sects and clans were not able to do something like that. Kaiya, since you have such talent, there's even more reason for you to cultivate arduously. Any extra strength you have is power that you can use to protect yourself. The divine kingdom of Pingtian won't be peaceful for the next period of time, Jianchen said to Kaiya seriously. He took out a large number of divine crystals and handed them all to her. Moreover, he still had 3 overgod level cores left over after he broke through to the 11th layer. He gave her one of them. Kaiya's situation was unique. Everyone else's cultivation was higher than hers, but due to their limited comprehension of the laws of the world, they were unable to break through. However, Kaiya's comprehension of laws had already reached the level of gods, while her cultivation was simply too lackluster in comparison. It was only at late reciprocity. If she had enough resources, she could become a god in a single breath. As a result, Jianchen gave Kaiya quite a lot of divine crystals this time. It was more than enough for her to become a god. Kaiya wanted to decline instinctively when Jianchen gifted her things selflessly. However, after a period of hesitation, she accepted them in the end. Everyone talked some more afterwards before they directly arrived at the main topic. Shangguan Mu'er said to Jianchen sternly, Jianchen, the 3 armies of the Empyrean demon cult have already arrived at the fortress on the border. The divine king has already led all the experts to the front lines. Before he left, the divine king sent a messenger, telling you to immediately go and provide support once you emerge. Jianchen immediately became sterner. Is the war starting? Brother, I'll go with you. Sacred Feather arrived beside Jianchen while his eyes shone with battle intent. Jianchen frowned slightly. He said, The Empyrean demon cult has sent 3 large armies this time, so they're clearly serious. It's extremely dangerous this time. I think even god kings will die, and overgods will struggle to protect themselves. As a result, I don't want you to take part in the battle this time. I will go to the front lines by myself. No. Brother, I must participate. I have comprehended the ways of slaughter. Going through difficult battles of life or death are only beneficial to me. Moreover, I'm already a god now and a peak god at that. Coupled with my natural abilities, I believe I can even put up a fight against overgods, Sacred Feather said firmly. Battle intent surged from him as his blood seemed to boil. Jianchen, all of us have witnessed much blood and death. Although we understand that you don't want us to take part because you're concerned about us, the battle this time will also be a type of training at the same time, said Houston. Jianchen, ever since I came to the Saints' world, I haven't been able to exercise my body in battle at all. This time, you have to let us get some exercise in battle. At the same time, you can show off the strength of the Tianyuan clan, Heiyu said as well. He immediately obtained Rui Jin and Hong Lian's support with his words. I want to go this time as well. With my current strength, I can help you at crucial times. Moreover, my zither will be even more effective in large-scale battles, Shangguan Mu'er said as well. She was extremely skilled with the zither, and she could use sound and music to disorientate the souls of people. She could even change the course of a large-scale battle. There must be someone who remains in the clan. Mu'er, your existence hasn't been revealed yet, so don't come with me this time. It's best if you stay and protect the clan. We should display our clan's strength when we need to and hide it when we don't have to. It won't be good if other people understand the exact strength of our Tianyuan clan, said Jianchen. In the end, Jianchen only left with a fraction of the people present. Ando Fu, Mo Ling, and the other regular elders all stayed behind. He only took Sacred Feather, Houston, Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian with him. As for Shun Jian and the other elders from the world of Forsaken Saints, they all remained in the clan. Newbies and Shiyu remained in seclusion. Jianchen did not disturb them. The next morning, a huge flying vehicle slowly rose up from the Tianyuan clan. It carried many experts in the Dong'an province and shot off at full speed. Below, there were countless people in the city who bid farewell to them. They wished them good luck as they prayed inside. Shangguan Mu'er and the others also stared at the flying vehicle that gradually traveled away from the forbidden grounds of the Tianyuan clan. They remained gathered for quite a while. Let's hope they can return safely, everyone prayed inside. Although the people going to the front lines were not weak, the battle this time was just too great after all. There were quite a few god kings taking part, so even overgods could not necessarily protect themselves. In the sky, the flying vehicle shot off at full speed. The endless stretch of clouds formed a boundless carpet of white. The fierce wind whistled, but a light screen around the vehicle stopped all of it. No matter how fierce the wind blew, it was unable to shake the vehicle at all. Jianchen sat at the very front of the vehicle in white clothes. His eyes were closed as he meditated like an old monk. A powerful presence would emanate from Jianchen and pass through the light screen around the vehicle, directly filling the surroundings and scaring off the beasts that roamed the wilderness. Behind him, Houston, Sacred Feather, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and Heiyu sat like that as well. They were just like statues. Aside from them, there were over a dozen gods on the flying vehicle. They were all the ancestors of the powerful clans in the provincial city. At this moment, all the ancestors gazed towards Houston and the others who sat in front of them. They studied them carefully as they secretly felt surprised. I heard there's an extremely mysterious forbidden grounds in the Tianyuan clan. These people should all be from there. The Tianyuan clan really is hiding their strength, the ancestors of the powerful clans thought to themselves. Whenever they saw Houston and Sacred Feather, they would shiver. They understood very well that Houston and Sacred Feather were no ordinary gods. After several hours of flying, Jianchen and the others finally arrived at the fortress on the boundary. Before them, the black city walls stood like a slumbering dragon, creating a grand and imposing sight. Countless complicated and profound formations were carved into the wall, flickering with light. An extremely tremendous amount of energy pulsed from the walls, shaking up the surroundings and even making space ripple. There was an extremely dazzling light screen that stretched from the ground towards the clouds before the city walls, forming a barrier. It separated the place into two worlds. Within the walls, the sun illuminated the place and shone brightly, filling it with a righteous spirit. Beyond the walls, black clouds and demonic auras filled the skies, sending the whole world into darkness. It gave off a cold presence that was just chilling. They were separated by just a single wall, yet it seemed like two completely different worlds. Everyone opened their eyes on the flying vehicle and stared down sternly. Jian Chen's eyes shone brightly. He seemed to be able to directly see through the darkness and look beyond the city walls. He clearly saw the three armies that had gathered at three bases. "State your identities." Just as Jian Chen's flying vehicle approached the fortress, over a dozen women and men in azure clothes arrived to block them. They all possessed extraordinary strength, with the weakest being gods and the leader being an overgod. They stood in the sky and encircled the flying vehicle that Jian Chen rode. Their cold eyes were filled with caution. Chapter 1913. Luo Yunfei. Jian Chen did not stand up on the flying vehicle. He studied the group of people who surrounded his aircraft calmly. Jian Chen had never seen any of them before, including the overgod. Moreover, their attires were basically all the same, so they were clearly an organization that originated from beyond the divine kingdom of Pingtian. "We are people from the Dong'an province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. This is the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Sir Jian Chen." Before Jian Chen could say anything, one of the gods seated towards the back spoke up. His gaze towards Jian Chen was filled with uncontainable admiration. All the people in the surroundings became surprised when they heard the god's words. At that moment, all of them stared at Jian Chen, who sat leisurely at the front. "You're the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chen?" The eyes of the overgod shone as he studied Jian Chen seriously, as if he wanted to understand him completely. All of them were familiar with the name Jian Chen, patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. In reality, the most popular conversation topic among the overgods was not the three armies of the Empyrean demon cult or the upcoming war. Instead, it was about the overgod that had suddenly shown up in the backwater divine kingdom. This person was naturally Jian Chen. Jian Chen had already become renowned since his battle against the protectors of the Earth Spirit sect. He had even been labeled as someone who possessed the strength to make it onto the 3,000 overgods plaque. The 3,000 names on the overgods plaque did not come from a single region or plane. Instead, it came from across the entire Saints world. Just how many overgods were there across the 49 Great Plains and the 81 Great Planets? To overcome such a tremendous number of people and make it onto the overgods plaque as one of the 3,000 most powerful overgods in the entire Saints world was a huge honor. As a result, Jian Chen's name naturally spread extremely quickly among the overgods, attracting the attention of many people. "Who's the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chen?" At this moment, a lazy voice rang out. A young man who seemed around 20 years old flew up from below. With his arms across, he stood directly in front of the flying vehicle that belonged to the Tian Yuan clan. He studied Jian Chen in a somewhat flippant manner. Moreover, he was clearly standing slightly higher than the flying vehicle, so it seemed like the young man was looking down on the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. "Greetings, Senior Luo." "Greetings, Protector Luo." The arrival of the young man immediately caused the people around Jian Chen to bow politely. Protector Luo nodded slightly. With a wave of his hand, he silenced everyone. However, his gaze remained fixed on Jian Chen for the entire time while the corner of his lips curled into an unserious smile. He seemed to be interested. "Are you the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan who has cropped up recently?" Protector Luo said while he looked at Jian Chen with a sliver of arrogance on his face. "That's right. I'm the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chen." "Sir, please give way." Jian Chen clasped his fist towards Protector Luo. He did not speak particularly politely or rudely. A sliver of cold light flashed through Protector Luo's eyes. His smile remained the same, and his expression did not change. he said, "In the recent days, your name has been as prominent as thunder. I've heard about you so much that my ears are going to become calloused, if that's possible. Many people have rumored that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan is powerful enough to make it onto the Overgod's plaque. I am Luo Yunfei from the sword sect of the Azure Clothed of the Taiye Empire. I hope I can witness the patriarch's skills. I hope the patriarch is willing." Luo Yunfei backed off slightly, and an extremely thin sword shaped like a willow leaf appeared in his hand. Luo Yunfei's presence suddenly changed now that he had the sword in his hand. He gave off a powerful and sharp sword intent. The power of the laws of the sword revolved around him, forming a flock of tiny sword chi that rapidly revolved around him. Jian Qin raised an eyebrow. He could not help but properly study Luo Yunfei. This was the first time he had come across an overgod who used the laws of the sword apart from Ling Hogong, and this person had even reached late overgod. As soon as Luo Yunfei's presence expanded, it alarmed countless people below. Immediately, many overgods from various organizations flew up from below. Even a few god kings had started paying attention to the situation. "Everyone, didn't you want to see Jian Qin? This is the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan from the Dong'an province of our divine kingdom of Pingtian, Jian Qin." The Grand Imperial Protector had gathered with all the overgods in a grand divine hall. He smiled as he said these words to everyone. The god kings around had become interested in the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, who was said to possess the strength to make it onto the overgod's plaque long ago. They all became interested when they heard the Grand Imperial Protector's words, and they sent over the presences of their souls. He really is worthy of being someone who can make it onto the overgod's plaque. Even though Jian Qin has not attempted it yet, so his name isn't on there, just his presence itself is quite extraordinary, an elder from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds praised. The faces of the 3 elders from the Earth Spirit sect near him darkened. They became twisted. By now, the surroundings of Jian Qin's aircraft could be described as completely crowded. A large number of overgods and gods had gathered there. They all studied Jian Qin with a strange light in their eyes. There was curiosity, doubt, suspicion, disapproval, and so on. So this is the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jian Qin, the person known to be able to make it onto the overgod's plaque. What person known to be able to make it onto the overgod's plaque? That's just what people who don't know anything about the overgod's plaque have said. With the entire Saints world in perspective, there is only a total of 3,000 people that can make it on there. Every single one of them is a great prodigy. I don't believe a backwater place like the divine kingdom of Pingtian can produce someone like that. Yes and no. We'll know once he fights Luo Yunfei of the sword sect of the Azure Clothed. We have all witnessed Luo Yunfei's strength. Although he's not enough to make it onto the overgod's plaque, there are not many people who can defeat him among overgods. That's right. Senior Luo is the most powerful. He's the strongest overgod in our sword sect of the Azure Clothed. Many elders have praised him. Let's wait and see. The patriarch of the Tianyuan clan definitely isn't his opponent. Everyone discussed with each other softly. A few female disciples of the sword sect of the Azure Clothed waved their fists as their eyes shone. They adored their senior as they cheered him on. However, Jian Qin did not move at all. He stared at Luo Yunfei calmly and said, "I've come here to repel the Empyrean demon cult, not to spar with you." Now that Jian Qin's chaotic body had broken through, he was on a completely different level compared to Luo Yunfei. He really was not interested in sparring with Luo Yunfei at all. Chapter 1914. Spar. However, the meaning of Jian Qin's words became twisted when some people in the surroundings heard them. Many people who doubted that Jian Qin possessed the battle prowess to make it onto the overgod's plaque became even more confident in their thoughts. Luo Yunfei of the sword sect of the Azure Clothed is famous in the Taiye Empire. Not only is he a direct disciple of one of the sect's ancestors, but his talent also makes him a unique existence within the southern region as well. He has even been named the strongest overgod in the Taiye Empire. Does Jian Qin know about Luo Yunfei's strength, which is why he is not brave enough to spar with him? That must be the case. Jian Qin just possesses some unearned reputation. After just some sentences from those people who have no knowledge of the Overgod's plaque at all, everyone else has been convinced that he can really make it onto there. In reality, he's not even Senior Luo's opponent. I'm certain that if Jianchen accepted the spar, Senior Luo would beat him to a pulp. The people who watched on in the surroundings all discussed softly. Many people looked at Jianchen with deep disdain. On the other hand, the handsome Luo Yunfei who wore azure clothes and held a thin sword earned the cheers from many people. Some of the beauties from a few large organizations would even gaze at him lovingly, having been deeply attracted by his presence. It left them infatuated. Not only did Luo Yunfei possess extraordinary talent, but he was also a direct disciple of the ancestor of the sword sect of the azure clothed as well. His status was so great that he even surpassed the princes of the Taiye Empire. Naturally, the female disciples from other organizations were closely attracted to Luo Yunfei, who had an extraordinary background. A sliver of arrogance appeared on Luo Yunfei's face as he heard the discussions around him. He looked at Jianchen from above and said, "So many of us have hurried over from distant lands. Naturally, it's all for repelling the Empyrean demon cult. However, having a spar before the war begins won't affect the battle at all. Instead, it'll entertain everyone while they have time to spare." Luo Yunfei did not back off at all. Instead, he drew closer as if he would not let Jianchen pass if they did not spar. He had already made up his mind. He would defeat the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan before everyone today so that everyone would stop spreading rumors that this fellow could make it onto the Overgod's plaque. Moreover, he would let everyone know that making it onto the Overgod's plaque was not that easy. This was because several dozen years ago, he himself had ventured to the central region and attempted to make it onto the Overgod's plaque with great ambition. However, he ended up leaving in failure. He was nowhere near close to making it onto the Overgod's plaque. As a result, he naturally did not wish to see an untested person being labeled as if they had already made it onto the plaque. That would basically mean he, Luo Yunfei, was not as great as them. "Looks like you're determined to spar with me," Jianchen said. He remained seated on the flying vehicle. His gaze was calm and his face did not change at all. "If that's the case, I'll spar with you. However, the war is of utmost importance, so to avoid any delays, let's limit the sparring to a single move." Limit it to a single move? Luo Yunfei frowned when he heard that. Although he was confident that Jianchen did not possess the strength to make it onto the Overgod's plaque, he had still defeated the two protectors of the Earth Spirit sect by himself after all. Achieving victory against him in a single move would definitely be difficult. What? Limit it to a single move? Isn't the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan simply too sly? He knows he's not Senior Luo's opponent, so he wants to limit the spar to a single move. That way, even if Senior Luo is far more powerful than him, it's impossible to determine victory as they're both late overgods after all. A female protector from the sword sect of the azure clothed scoffed. The people in the surroundings nodded to themselves. The woman's words did make sense. "If you can move me at all in a single move, it'll be my loss. How about that?" Jianchen continued. He slowly rose up and left the aircraft. With Luo Yunfei's strength, there are barely any people who can remain still after he strikes out with his full strength. Jianchen is going to lose for sure. However, seeing how he defeated the protectors from the Earth Spirit sect, even if he's not as great as Luo Yunfei, he can't be too far off. Luo Yunfei will definitely be able to move Jianchen in a single strike, but he might not necessarily be able to injure him. As a result, Jianchen won't suffer a horrific defeat even if he loses, an overgod who also came from a large sect said from within the crowd. In a prolonged battle, Jianchen will definitely be reduced to an extremely horrific shape, which was why he set such a condition. He's just trying to protect his own pride as much as possible, so he won't have to suffer a horrible defeat. Interesting. It sure is interesting. Even without fighting, Jianchen, who is supposed to be able to make it onto the Overgod's plaque, is already ready to lose. Sacred Feather, Houston, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and Heiyu all remained seated on the flying vehicle. They stared at Jianchen calmly. They were all extremely confident in him. They all understood Jianchen. They knew that since Jianchen had made a bet like that, he possessed complete confidence. Alright, we'll set the limit to 1 move. I hope you don't disappoint me, patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Luo Yunfei agreed straightforwardly. Although limiting it to a single move had basically removed the chance of teaching Jian Chen a fierce lesson, disproving Jian Chen's greatness was basically achieving his goals as well. Natural sword of the azure-clothed sleeves. Sword chi surged from Luo Yunfei. He lifted his thin sword. After crying out, he began to swing his sleeves wildly. As he did that, huge gusts of wind were created. The entire world seemed to have come to a halt in that moment. At the same time, an extremely resplendent sword chi appeared where his sleeves were. It directly shot towards Jian Chen with a frightening might that was enough to make all the overgods present turn pale. Natural sword of the azure-clothed sleeves was a battle skill the founding ancestor of the sword sect of the azure-clothed created. It was extremely powerful. Not only was it the greatest battle skill Luo Yunfei possessed, but it was also one of the peak battle skills from the sword sect of the azure-clothed. In order to defeat Jian Chen cleanly, Luo Yunfei used the strongest battle skill he knew without any hesitation. Jian Chen only extended a finger at the sword chi. Powerful sword chi condensed, shining with brilliant white light, causing the onlookers to close their eyes involuntarily. The power from the laws of the sword disturbed the senses of their souls as well, disabling that too. Boom. Many people failed to see Jian Chen's move. All they heard was a deafening sound, and sword chi scattered in all directions like rain. All the overgods in the surroundings had to fend them off seriously. When the white light dispersed, Jian Chen and Luo Yunfei remained standing where they were. Both of them were seemingly unharmed. Jian Chen had not even taken half a step back. Impossible. Did the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan really block Luo Yunfei's strike? Someone cried out as they struggled to believe what had happened before them. Clearly, many people found this outcome to be extremely surprising. This Jian Chen defeated 2 late overgods in the past after all. That's nothing surprising, but looking at it now, he's equal to Luo Yunfei. Looks like he's still quite far from being able to make it onto the overgod's plaque, an overgod commented. It has been 1 move. I can pass now, right? Jian Chen hovered in the sky as his white robes fluttered in the wind. He spoke calmly. On the other side, Luo Yunfei slowly concealed his presence. He stared at Jian Chen deeply without any expression at all and clasped his hands. The patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan really lives up to his reputation. You have my admiration. With that, Luo Yunfei turned around and left. A few of the overgods present looked at Luo Yunfei as he left. They were suspicious and became doubtful. Why did Luo Yunfei seem like he was cowering? At this moment, in the luxurious room that belonged to Luo Yunfei within the divine hall from the sword sect of the azure-clothed, Luo Yunfei stood there all by himself. He rubbed his neck and his clean, white hand became covered with blood. Luo Yunfei entered a daze as he stared at the blood on his hand. Only after quite a while did he murmur, "The patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan is actually so powerful." Chapter 1915. Entering the main hall, Luo Yunfei could not help but think about what had happened when he clashed with Jian Chen. The strike was short, occurring in just a split second, but only Luo Yunfei out of all the people present understood its danger. He had used his most powerful battle skill, but not only had it been dispersed in a single strike by the patriarch, but the sword chi from the patriarch had even directly engulfed him and left behind a wound that was invisible to the naked eye on his neck. He was completely powerless against it. If it were not for the patriarch's mercy, he would have already been beheaded. At this moment, the door to Luo Yunfei's room opened. A middle-aged man that had quite a striking appearance walked in. He also wore azure clothes. The patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan really is powerful. There is probably just a handful of people that can really put up a fight against him among all the overgods. He does indeed possess the strength to make it onto the overgod's plaque. Yunfei, I hope you remember your defeat well. Even if you're the prodigy of the sword sect of the azure-clothed, you must not become arrogant. I believe in the future, you will also possess strength equivalent to the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, and your name will be recorded on the overgod's plaque. the middle-aged man said to Luo Yunfei sincerely. I will commit Elder Cheng's words to heart. Luo Yunfei bowed at the middle-aged man out of complete respect. Although his master was the ancestor of the sect, in reality, many of the elders had guided him before. They had really poured all their resources into him. Outside, Jianchen returned to the flying vehicle. He remained seated at the very front, leaving with the people from the Dong'an province under the gazes of everyone. He directly headed to the base camp. This time, no one stood forward to block their way. No one managed to see the hidden danger within the strike Jianchen had dealt to Luo Yunfei, so many people still believed Jianchen was not Luo Yunfei's opponent. However, he still managed to receive Luo Yunfei's attack perfectly after all, which had shown off his strength. There was only a handful of overgods who sensed that something was amiss from how Luo Yunfei had basically fled. However, they clearly did not think that Luo Yunfei had been defeated. Just when Jianchen was about to approach the base camp where all the organizations gathered with the people from the Dong'an province, many overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian flew up from below. They exchanged pleasantries with Jianchen whilst smiling. Jianchen put the flying vehicle away. He took the people from the Dong'an province with him as he made his way around with the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. He would look around from time to time. The camp within the fortress was extremely large. It was basically stuck to the wall for several dozen kilometers. He was unable to see the end of it. Not only were the huge armies of the divine kingdom of Pingtian gathered there, but the armies from the divine kingdom of Qingyang, divine kingdom of Nine Stars, divine kingdom of Scarlet Clouds, divine kingdom of Balaj, divine kingdom of Kaiyan, divine kingdom of Datian, and divine kingdom of Ether Cloud had gathered there as well. As a result, the number of soldiers in the fortress had reached into the 100 millions. All the armies from the divine kingdoms gathered in one location. This would have never happened under ordinary circumstances, but in order to stop the advance of the Empyrean demon cult, they had all thrown aside their thoughts of territory and personal interests. In the end, Jianchen and the others were taken into a divine hall. After Shendo and the others explained it to him, Jianchen understood there were quite a few of these divine halls in the military camp. The relationships between all the major organizations that had come this time were complicated. There were grievances and friendships between many of them. Naturally, they could not stay together. They all possessed their special divine halls. The divine hall that Jianchen was in right now belonged to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. All the people who possessed some status in the divine kingdom had gathered here. To no surprise, Yang Kai and a few elders from the Yang family were here as well. Jianchen was already someone influential, so the overgods who stayed within the divine hall immediately rose up and welcomed him when he arrived. Only the people from the Yang family remained where they were. Sacred Feather, Houston, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and Heiyu who had come with Jianchen naturally attracted quite some attention as well. They roughly understood the strength of the Tianyuan clan, so it was no secret what cultivation level the elders of the Tianyuan clan possessed. Now that 5 unfamiliar faces had suddenly appeared, many of them naturally became curious. In particular, Sacred Feather and Houston left many of the present overgods secretly surprised from the vague presence they emitted. At this moment, the Grand Imperial Protector of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian walked in from outside, and everyone bowed at him. The Grand Imperial Protector nodded with a smile. He looked at Jianchen and said, "Jianchen, His Majesty wants you to go to the main hall. Please come with me." Afterwards, Jianchen followed the Grand Imperial Protector. They made their way towards the center of the camp, passing by divine hall after divine hall. In the end, he arrived at a hall that was located in the center of the camp under the Grand Imperial Protector's lead. The so-called main hall was equivalent to the commander's tent. It was where all the commanders and higher-ups gathered. The divine king sat on the king's throne within the main hall with a peaceful expression. There were over 20 women and men of various ages seated to the 2 sides below him. Every single one of them emitted tremendous presences. They were extremely powerful. Jianchen's arrival attracted everyone's attention immediately. At that moment, all the people seated looked at Jianchen. Jianchen immediately felt uncomfortable. Every single one of the 20 or so gazes that gathered on him were extremely powerful, which pressured him greatly. There are actually so many god kings. Jian Chen was secretly surprised when he saw the people seated to the two sides. It was quite a shocking sight for over 20 god kings to be seated together. Jian Chen's heart churned at this sight, and he struggled to remain calm. However, when he saw the divine king, who remained seated on his throne, he became slightly dazed. He felt slightly puzzled inside. Sure, the divine king was a god king, but were the other people not god kings as well? Moreover, they came from great sects and clans or imperial families from empires. All of their statuses were greater than a divine kingdom's divine king. Without any exaggeration, any of the god kings present possessed a far greater status than the divine king of a divine kingdom. The divine king would have to treat them politely and with great courtesy. However, the divine king was currently seated high up as if he was greater than everyone else. The god kings from the various empires should have possessed supreme statuses, yet they sat obediently below the divine king. Seeing how calm they were, it was as if this was how things were supposed to be. Chapter 1916. Primordial Realm Expert. Looks like the divine king isn't simple. He's bold enough to take the king's throne before the god kings from the empires. Just that alone means that the divine king's status far exceeds everyone else's, Jian Chen thought. However, his expression did not change at all. He clasped his fist and bowed at the divine king as well as the god kings in the surroundings. He did not act particularly humble or arrogant. Jian Chen, there's no need to be so polite. The main reason why I've called you here is so that everyone gathered here can personally see you. After all, supreme overgods that can make it onto the overgods plaque are extremely rare in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. The divine king smiled. He spoke calmly and pleasantly. Jian Chen, we all witnessed your battle against Yunfei. Your comprehension of the laws of the sword is roughly at the same level at Yunfei. The true deciding factor was the power you controlled. An azure-robed old man immediately said from the god kings to the two sides. He was an elder of the sword sect of the azure cloth. He had once guided Luo Yunfei, so he understood Luo Yunfei's strength extremely well. The old man continued, fused with the power of laws, every strike you deal possesses the terrifying strength of peak overgods. It's far greater than the origin energy we cultivate. As a result, Yunfei was defeated by you in a single strike. The people in the surroundings all nodded in response to the elder's analysis. They were all god kings, so they had witnessed all the minor details of Jian Chen and Luo Yunfei's fight clearly through the senses of their souls. Jian Chen shivered inside when he heard that. All of these god kings were impressive. He had never thought that they would be able to see everything that had happened in that instance in his fight against Luo Yunfei clearly. For Jian Chen to possess such a powerful energy, the legacy you possess must be extremely great. Looks like Brother Jian Chen also has a great master, said Elder Mu of the Earth Spirit sect. He seemed at leisure and at ease, but he had already surrounded Jian Chen with the senses of his soul. Under the perception of the senses, even though he could not see through Jian Chen's true feelings, none of his movements could avoid his senses. The eyes of many of the god kings lit up, and they stared at Jian Chen casually after they heard Elder Mu's words. Whether Brother Jian Chen's legacy is great, or if he has a great master has nothing to do with your Earth Spirit sect. Has his cultivation method caught the eyes of your Earth Spirit sect? Are you having some inappropriate thoughts? An elder from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds sneered. The Taoist sect of Calm Clouds and the Earth Spirit sect formed the two great sects of the Heavenly Moon Empire, but they were always hostile with each other. They would argue wherever they went, and they would try to suppress the other at all costs. They would not show any respect towards the other party at all. Elder Mu snorted coldly. Our Earth Spirit sect is a famed sect in the southern region after all, so why would we do something like that? Moreover, our Earth Spirit sect does not lack cultivation methods. Afterwards, Jian Chen naturally received the invitations from many large sects and organizations. Many people wanted to rope in a supreme overgod like Jian Chen. This was because once he became a god king, he would definitely become a supreme god king and dominate. Naturally, Jianchen did not choose to join any of them, turning all the invitations down. However, Jianchen still felt a sense of danger after what happened that day. Although the God Kings did not recognize chaotic force, they could tell that his cultivation method was extraordinary through the chaotic force. It was possible that some of them had really become interested in his cultivation method. Jianchen's heart tightened after thinking up to there as he secretly raised his vigilance. However, fortunately, he had broken through with the chaotic body. Although he was still unable to truly hold off God Kings, he could fight back to a certain degree at the very least. Boom! At this moment, a deafening sound rang out from outside. The ground shook violently. Even the main hall where all the God Kings stood shook heavily. The 3 commanders of the Empyrean demon cult have moved. Everyone, come with me to fend them off. The divine king growled. With that, he stood up from his throne and quickly made his way outside. Over 20 God Kings made their way outside as well, following behind him. Meanwhile, Jianchen walked at the very back. However, as soon as Jianchen moved, he detected an extremely obscure but cold-killing intent all of a sudden. It enveloped his body, making his body grow cold. Jianchen frowned. The light in his eyes flickered. Just when he wanted to find out who the killing intent had come from, it vanished suddenly. Jianchen's face sank. He knew he had caught the eyes of some of the God Kings. Although he had no idea who it was, he was certain that person was among them. Is it the Earth Spirit sect? Jianchen thought. However, he was not certain even though he and the Earth Spirit sect had grievances. The majestic walls of the fortress on the edge of the Divine Kingdom had already become crowded. Not only were the armies from several divine kingdoms gathered there, but there were also the members and disciples from large organizations and sections. Every single one of them gave off quite powerful presences, so when they gathered together, it swept out in an overwhelming fashion, causing the wind and clouds to churn in the sky. Jianchen found Sacred Feather, Houston, Ruijin, and the others on the walls. After warning them to be careful, he stood steadily with his arms crossed. He stared into the distance. Beyond the walls and the light screen, the 3 armies of the Empyrean demon cult all stood in formation. Black clouds surged high in the sky as demonic aura flooded the surroundings. Powerful pressures condensed and charged up. At an altitude of several hundred meters, below the black clouds, 3 figures hovered. Their monstrous presences were vast, possessing the might of God Kings. Under the control of these 3 people, the pressure surged over in an overwhelming manner. It caused space to freeze and origin energy to disperse. The light screen up ahead began to distort. Just the pressure from the 3 of them was enough to shake up the extremely powerful barrier of energy. Standing on the walls, Jianchen stared at the 3 figures that were wrapped up in demonic auras. He could vaguely see that there were 2 men and 1 woman. He furrowed his brows tightly when he sensed the dominating presence they gave off. They must be the commanders of the 3 armies. They really are powerful. There's probably not a single person among the 20 or so God Kings that have come as reinforcements that can hold their ground against them all alone. I even feel like any one of them is more powerful than the God Kings I encountered on the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. Jianchen was secretly surprised. The strength of the commanders amazed him. At this moment, the Divine King took a step out. The shaking wall of light immediately stabilized with his step. No matter how powerful the presences from the 3 commanders were, they were unable to shake up the light screen anymore. At the same time, an invisible presence appeared. Not only did this presence prevent the presences of the 3 commanders from getting any closer to the light screen, but it also forcefully pushed it back. The dragon robes on the Divine King were colorful and attention-drawing. He only stood there casually, but he seemed like he could stop all those armies. He seemed invincible. Empyrean demon cult, it's impossible for you to take over my Divine Kingdom. I urge you to leave and not make pointless sacrifices, the Divine King said indifferently as he gave off a sense of dominance. His voice was thunderous, booming through the camps of the 3 armies. It directly dispersed the black clouds gathered in the sky while the formations of the 3 armies shook, almost collapsing directly. The might of his voice was extremely terrifying. If it were slightly more powerful, it would have been enough to directly heavily injure and kill people within the 3 armies from the Empyrean demon cult without a doubt. Jianchen stared at the Divine King deeply. This was not the first time he had seen the Divine King, but every time he saw him, he would feel that the Divine King was unfathomable, where he could not learn anything from him. Only when the Divine King demonstrated his might did he finally witness the tip of the iceberg. Is the Divine King an expert who has made it onto the God King's throne? After all, he was already a God King when he founded the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. The Divine Kingdom of Pingtian has existed for almost 1,000,000 years now, Jianchen wondered. At this moment, an extremely terrifying presence suddenly appeared from behind the armies. It surged out like a volcanic eruption. Space and origin energy shook wherever it passed by while the ground below it cracked and sank. All the people on the walls of the fortress found it difficult to breathe, as if a mountain weighed on their chests and crushed at their hearts. Not only did all the overgods, including Jianchen, experience that, but even the God Kings paled slightly before the presence. Their bodies all sank slightly. Even God Kings struggled to endure the might of the presence. In the end, the presence that had emerged from behind the armies shot towards the barrier of energy beyond the fortress walls in an extremely brutal manner. It seemed like the presence was going to shatter the barrier in a single stroke. The primordial realm. Jianchen became extremely stern. From the terrifying presence, he immediately determined that it came from a primordial realm expert. The presence was just too powerful. Just the presence alone was enough to destroy everything. It was far beyond the limits of God Kings. Chapter 1917. The Divine King's strength. Jianchen's heart sank. Even though their side possessed over 20 God Kings from various empires, there were no primordial realm experts according to his knowledge. However, the Empyrean demon cult had gained a primordial realm expert. How were they supposed to fend off an expert like that? Even if all the God Kings worked together, they probably could not stop a primordial realm expert. The primordial realm was a higher major cultivation level. The difference between it and God King was like an uncrossable chasm. It was rumored that the top 10 supreme God Kings on the God King's throne possessed the power to defeat primordial realm experts, but that was only early infinite primes. Jianchen glanced at the Divine King subconsciously. He always seemed unfathomable in Jianchen's eyes. When he only revealed the slightest part of his strength, he had almost managed to make the armies of the Empyrean demon cult collapse. Without a single doubt, he was the most powerful expert on their side. He wondered if the Divine King could stop the presence of the primordial realm expert. However, just when Jianchen thought of that, the dragon robes of the Divine King began to flutter despite the absence of wind. A presence equally as terrifying exploded from his burly body like a volcano. It swept out with might that was enough to shake up the surroundings. It directly passed through the screen of light, headed towards the armies of the Empyrean demon cult, and clashed with the primordial realm expert's presence. Jianchen's eyes narrowed when he saw this. He discovered that the Divine King's presence was so powerful that it actually managed to stop the primordial realm expert's presence. The Divine King's presence was no weaker in comparison. The presence of the primordial realm. The Divine King is a primordial realm expert as well. Jianchen was shocked while his gaze towards the Divine King became filled with surprise. He was not the only one. Even the eyes of all the overgods within the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian and the overgods from the empires widened as they stared at the Divine King in disbelief. All of their hearts churned. All of them were the same as Jianchen. They all believed that the Divine King was only a God King. Only now did they realize he had actually reached the primordial realm. Experts of the primordial realm were equivalent to ancestral emperors of those ancient empires and the ancestors of those powerful sections. While all the overgods expressed their surprise at the Divine King's strength, the God Kings remained calm. They did not show any surprise at all. No wonder the Divine King remained seated on his throne, above everyone else, before the God Kings of the empires. I was confused before, but I finally understand now. The Divine King has already reached the primordial realm. The Divine King probably only broke through recently. Otherwise, the news of his breakthrough would have become public knowledge long ago. A few of the overgods from the empires thought to themselves. Beyond the walls, the presence from the primordial realm expert of the Empyrean demon cult was stopped by the divine king. The two presences clashed with great intensity, and the terrifying pressure filled the surroundings. Not only did the entire sky shake, but there were even visible ripples through space like it was water. In the end, the two presences reached a stalemate. Neither of them managed to gain the upper hand. Pingtian, let's leave the miscellaneous matters to the people below. Let's play a game of chess and observe the battle. A dignified voice suddenly rang out from behind the Empyrean demon cult's army. A figure appeared on a black cloud as demonic aura and black mist churned around him. His presence was extremely terrifying, and it was enough to cause the expressions of all the god kings to change. The divine king stood on the city walls. He stared at the person cloaked in black mist and said, "Vice Leader Huayan, I never thought you'd come personally." "Ha, Pingtian, you've already reached the primordial realm. You're no longer a god king. Since you've come, it's nothing difficult for me to come as well." The person in the black mist laughed aloud. As he spoke, the mist around him began to disperse, revealing a middle-aged man with quite a striking appearance in black robes. The middle-aged man's face seemed slightly evil, which gave people a chilling feeling. Huayan waved his hand and a chessboard appeared in the air. He directly sat down before it and made a gesture of invitation towards the divine king. The divine king remained calm. He took a step and appeared before Huayan like he had teleported. Then he sat down on the other side of the chessboard. As primordial realm experts, they could not fight readily, as the damage caused would just be too great. If the two of them began fighting fearlessly, the terrifying shockwaves of energy would probably be enough to cause heavy losses for the people on their sides while the fortress would be reduced to ruins. As a result, whether it was Huayan or the divine king, neither of them wished to fight. It would only increase the casualties. The costs would outweigh the benefits. Is that the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan? Jian Qin stared at Huayan. This was the same person who killed the supreme god king Duanmu in the past. It was also because of this person that the overgods who had gathered in God King Duanmu's dwelling dared not to accept his legacy. It was also because of this person that Ling Hogong vanished from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, going into hiding in a place where no one knew. The primordial realm experts of both sides were busy now. Even though they possessed great power, they were unable to interfere with the battle below. Attack! As the three commanders bellowed, the 300,000 men began to move together in their formations. The war had formally begun. Immediately, countless formations were activated among the three armies. They flickered under the dark clouds and emitted powerful pulses of energy. Every single formation was composed of 10,000 people, and a small formation scroll hovered in the center of them. Not only were the 10,000 people able to pour their powers together perfectly through the formation, but they had also become even stronger than before after being amplified. Boom! With that, the sky, ground, mountains, and everything shook. The three armies had formed 30 large formations, attacking the light screen before the wall with their full strength whilst emitting surging ripples of energy. The barrier of light was extremely powerful. Even god kings would need to expend quite the effort to get through it. However, after withstanding such a fierce attack, it shook wildly. Its radiance rapidly faded. The huge army of the divine kingdom of Pingtian began to move as well. Under the commands of the Grand Imperial Protector, the army was divided into several groups. A portion of them arrived before the formation that created the barrier of light and poured their own origin energy into the crucial points to support it. Another group of people stood on the walls. They pressed their hands firmly against the walls as origin energy surged from them constantly. All of it was deposited into the walls. In the next moment, all the walls began to shine. Countless complicated and profound formations appeared. With the support of the origin energy from the soldiers, the formations erupted with great might, shooting beams of energy at the armies of the Empyrean demon cult. Chapter 1918. Yashi Lian Boom. Boom. Immediately, thunderous sounds rang out constantly. The beams of energy from the fortress were blinding, illuminating the sky snow-white. Every beam of energy pulsed with extremely great power. However, when the beams of energy landed on the soldiers from the Empyrean demon cult, the demonic aura from the formations blocked it. The demonic aura was extremely powerful. Even after more than a dozen beams had landed, they were still unable to pierce through the aura. The soldiers of the three armies used the black, demonic aura to fend off the attacks from the fortress while they themselves activated the formations and dealt powerful attacks at the screen of light that blocked their way. The barrier of light reached towards the sky and penetrated the earth. If it did not go, they would not be able to get past it even if they could fly or burrow. The energy of the light screen depleted extremely quickly when faced with the barrage of vicious attacks. The soldiers who provided energy to the barrier paled very quickly, having used up all the origin energy within them. Just when they could no longer support the barrier, a second wave of soldiers went up to replace them, stabilizing the barrier to the greatest of their ability. The soldiers who supplied energy to the formations on the walls were also replaced wave after wave. At the same time, a large number of divine crystals were poured into the formations. Under the dual support, the might of the formations was pushed to the limits. Jian Chen and the people from the Dong'an province stood together on the city walls. They looked at the situation below. Jian Chen frowned heavily. The 9 armies of the Empyrean demon cult really are powerful. No wonder they can defeat armies that reach into the millions with just 100,000 people. The formations consisting of 10,000 people are erupting with strength at the peak of Overgod. Even the prodigy of the sword sect of the azure-clothed, Luo Yunfei, would only be able to flee before these formations, Jian Chen murmured as he stared at the 3 armies. Not only did the people from the 3 armies manage to display strength at peak Overgod after pouring all their power together, but their individual strengths were impressive as well. They were deities at the very least. Although the divine kingdom of Pingtian possessed over 100 million soldiers, they only possessed an advantage in terms of quantity and not quality. They were nowhere near the level of the 300,000 people of the Empyrean demon cult. The 9 armies completely consisted of godhood cultivators, but the huge army that belonged to the divine kingdom of Pingtian mainly consisted of origin realm cultivators. The difference in strength between the two sides was evident. Within the divine kingdom of Pingtian, only the royal divine army can rival such a powerful army. Jian Chen sighed inside. The royal divine army was very powerful as well, completely composed of godhood cultivators too. However, there were just too few soldiers. On the battlefield, the soldiers of the Empyrean demon cult had to attack the barrier of energy while enduring the beams of energy from the walls. Very soon, a few people became overwhelmed, and a few soldiers died. The beams of light penetrated their bodies. On the battlefield filled with shock waves of energy, it was impossible for their souls to escape. They directly dispersed. The divine kingdom of Pingtian's side paid quite a hefty price as well. They had gone through several waves of soldiers to support the formations alone, even when ignoring the number of divine crystals they had spent. Hee. Look at you men. You're offering up your origin energy so desperately. Is it really worth it? Just what benefits have the divine kingdom of Pingtian provided you with that's worth you laying down your lives for? In my opinion, it's better if you use this power to fly away with the person you love, far away from the battlefield where you can spend your time together. At this moment, a giggle rang through the air. It was filled with endless charm, flooding out all the booms in the battlefield and ringing through the fortress. Many overgods on the walls became dazed the moment they heard the voice as confusion filled their eyes. However, this confusion only lasted for a few seconds before they recovered. All of their foreheads became covered with cold sweat as they experienced a sense of lingering fear. Even Jian Chen felt his soul jump. He had almost dropped his guard. In the next moment, his eyes immediately began to shine brightly. He guarded his mind firmly as he stared right ahead with shining eyes. The voice did not affect him. The commander of the 7th Army is Yashi Lian. She's also a late god king and a transformed 9-tailed fox. She possesses natural sexual charm and is skilled in charming her opponents. Jian Chen thought back to the divine king's introduction of the 3 commanders. The person who had tried to charm the soldiers just now was clearly the commander of the 7th Army, Yaxi Lian. Jian Chen was filled with caution. The charm in Yaxi Lian's voice clearly was not targeting him. Despite that being the fact, he had almost dropped his guard. He had no idea if he could still remain rational if it targeted him. Although Yaxi Lian's voice did not affect the overgods too much, as it did not purposefully target them. However, the soldiers gathered within the fortress were not that powerful. The moment Yaxi Lian's voice had rung out, they seemed to become controlled, and a sliver of confusion appeared in their eyes. Yaxi Lian's voice rang through their heads constantly. It had defeated them mentally in a single moment, making all of them lose their focus. The divine kingdom of Pingtian only gives me these many divine crystals every year. Is it really worth it for me to risk my life for just these divine crystals? I have a wife. Why don't I fly away with my wife, far away from the battlefield? Why must I take part in the war this time and offer up my life for no reason? At that moment, many people began to waver. The soldiers who provided energy to the screen of light temporarily stopped what they were doing as well. Their willpower and fighting spirit vanished, and the screen of light rapidly dimmed. Yaxi Lian's charming techniques were extremely powerful. With just that, she managed to affect the minds of the entire army. Sensing the army's weakening morale, the expressions of the god kings on the walls all changed. Immediately, one of them bellowed out. His bellow was thunderous, booming through the heads of all the soldiers. It immediately allowed them to return to their senses. However, after being distracted for a slight moment, the light screen no longer had enough energy to maintain itself. Under the full-powered attacks of the 3 armies, it fell with a great boom. Great shockwaves of energy stormed through the surroundings, blowing away the soldiers who provided energy to the barrier. Everyone was torn to shreds. Before they had even hit the ground, they had already lost their lives. Kill! Without the obstruction of the barrier, the fortress of the divine kingdom of Pingtian was exposed before the armies of the Empyrean demon cult. The presences of the 3 armies surged as they all produced war cries. They directly charged up to the walls. All overgods set out. Kill the opponents. The Grand Imperial Protector called out. He was extremely stern. Keep yourselves safe. Don't travel too far away from the walls. Jian Chen warned the people behind him before drawing out the startling rainbow sword. He directly charged at the Empyrean demon cult as he emanated with surging sword chi. Dazzling light flickered in the surroundings and obliterated the demonic aura in the area. He directly charged at the 10,000-man formations with great might. Chapter 1919. A chaotic battle of overgods. When Jian Chen struck out, the other overgods did not stand around idly either. They all soared into the sky and charged at the 3 armies of the Empyrean demon cult aggressively. With that, several hundred overgods flew out from the divine kingdom of Pingtian's side. There were only around a dozen overgods that came from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, while a few dozen came from the neighboring divine kingdoms. The rest came from the empires and the sections. When the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian's side was mobilized, many overgods flew out from the side of the Empyrean demon cult as well. They engaged in intense battles against the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian high up in the sky, preventing them from attacking the 10,000-man formations. Immediately, booms rang through the skies while terrifying energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings. It filled the entire sky, causing the sun to dim. The fortress constantly shook as well. However, it was extraordinarily tough, and inscriptions flickered on there, enduring the terrifying storms of energy staunchly. The battles between the overgods was intense. No one possessed a fixed opponent. They fought wherever they went such that the opponent from before would be replaced in the next second. The battle between overgods was extremely intense. In just a short while, the sky became filled with blood and broken limbs. Quite a few people were already heavily injured or even dead, falling out of the skies as corpses. Jian Chen also entered the chaotic battle of overgods with the startling rainbow sword. His sword shone brightly as sword chi radiated from it. He did not show any mercy at all. However, In order to avoid attracting the attention of the upper echelon of the Empyrean demon cult, he purposefully hid his strength. He only used the same amount of strength as when he faced off against Luo Yunfei. However, even with that being the case, he stood at the peak among overgods. Very few late overgods from the Empyrean demon cult were able to match up to him. Jian Chen purposefully avoided late overgods as opponents, targeting early and mid overgods instead. He killed them with lightning speed. 3, 4, 5. Very soon, a total of 7 early and mid overgods had died to Jian Chen's hands. Whenever he killed someone, he would collect their space rings as well. The senses of his soul had covered the entire battlefield. At the same time, he was paying close attention to Sacred Feather, Houston, Rue Jean, and so on. However, the battlefield was huge. Under the surges of energy, Jian Chen's senses were affected quite heavily. The power of his soul was being depleted at a rapid rate, but he did not care. The prodigy of the sword sect of the Azure clothed from the Taiye Empire, Luo Yunfei, also demonstrated extremely great strength. He rarely came across a proper opponent among the people that had the same cultivation as him, and 5 early and mid overgods had already died to his hands. In the end, he met a late overgod and engaged in an intense battle with him. Aside from Luo Yunfei, the prodigies from the other empires demonstrated great ability as well. Every single one of them was very powerful, basically the same as Luo Yunfei. The Empyrean demon cult's side did not possess any less powerful overgods either. They behaved the same as Jian Chen and the others, purposefully picking weaker opponents. Very soon, the empires had all suffered heavy casualties. Quite a few early and mid overgods from the various empires and sects were slain by the enemy. Jian Chen could clearly see the 2 early overgods that he had beheaded with a single strike from the Earth Spirit sect through the senses of his soul. A young man in black clothes smashed their head to pieces with a single palm strike. This person also gave off a surging demonic aura, dispersing their souls. Nearby, Protector Gong and Protector Wu from the Earth Spirit sect both became infuriated when they saw the fates of their juniors. They roared out furiously and abandoned their opponents, charging at the young man who had claimed the lives of the 2 juniors together. Although the young man from the Empyrean demon cult was at the same cultivation level as Protector Gong and Protector Wu, he was extremely powerful. The demonic aura around him churned. The black mist would change as he wished, turning into a huge palm that swept out. In just a single strike, he sent Protector Gong and Protector Wu flying. Killing the 2 of them will take some time. I'll remove your souls later. The young man stared at Protector Gong and Protector Wu coldly. He no longer continued fighting with them. He went off to find more early and mid overgods. He remembered the orders from the 3 commanders that regardless of the outcome of the war, he had to kill as many experts as possible. The mid overgod closest to the young man right now was the ancestor of the Yubing clan from the frigid snow province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Bing Lu gripped his dragon-headed staff. Just when he fought back a mid-overgod, he suddenly experienced an extremely great sense of threat. All the hairs on him stood up at that moment. The young man from the Empyrean demon cult appeared before Bing Lu silently. He directly extended his hand indifferently towards the top of Bing Lu's head. A terrifying pressure filled his hand. A gleam of light shone through Bing Lu's eyes. Even though he knew he was not the young man's opponent, he felt no fear. He struck out as hard as he could using his staff with the laws of ice, causing ice crystals to form in the air. The young man's strength was extremely terrifying. When his hand fell, Bing Lu's staff snapped in half. Afterwards, his hand continued downwards without slowing at all, heading towards Bing Lu's head. In this moment of life or death, Bing Lu's body shook slightly. He moved back by 3 inches like he had teleported, avoiding the fatal strike by a hair's breadth. In the end, the young man's hand basically scraped past Bing Lu's face, leaving behind 5 bloody marks. The young man produced a soft interjection of surprise when he saw that his strike had missed. He looked at Bing Lu in some surprise, but he did not mind it too much. He took a step out, and his hand struck out again. He reached for the top of Bing Lu's head again as if he wanted to smash Bing Lu's head to pieces. During the entire time, the young man in black was extremely composed. He radiated with confidence. Bing Lu became extremely stern. He could sense the strength of the young man. It was not something he could fend off. Just when he wanted to dodge with his full strength, there was a sudden flash, and the commander of the Royal Divine Army, Xian Dou, appeared before him. He wore armor as he held a sword in his hand, making it quite the striking appearance. With the thrum of the sword, Xian Dou swung his sword as hard as he could at the young man's hand. The young man smiled scornfully when he faced Xian Dou's attack. Demonic aura surged in his hand, and his move that targeted the top of Bing Lu's head changed. It struck the guard of the sword with lightning speed. Bang! The hand and the guard were like two mountains that had collided, producing a heavy sound. Energy wreaked havoc, and Xian Dou's sword was directly blown away. The powerful force ripped the wedge between Xian Dou's thumb and index finger, covering the sword hilt with blood. So powerful! Xian Dou was extremely shocked. He was also a late overgod, but the difference between him and the young man was just too great. A single strike from the young man had dispersed the power of laws he had condensed on his sword. The young man remained indifferent. He continued to attack Xian Dou. Even though he wielded no weapon, his battle prowess was still extremely shocking. In just 3 strikes, he heavily injured Xian Dou, making blood spurt from his mouth wildly. The deep imprint of a hand had appeared on Xian Dou's chest plate. Chapter 1920. A sneak attack from behind. Aside from Jian Chen, who had thrown himself into the depths of the armies, the other people from the divine kingdom of Pingtian were not powerful enough. They gathered in a small region. Whenever they saw danger in one region, a few overgods would immediately hurry over. However, basically all of these people were early overgods, and quite a few of them were mid-overgods. It was impossible for them to be the terrifying young man's opponent. In just a few moves, the overgods who had come over to provide support were heavily injured. If it were not for the fact that they looked out for one another, they probably would have died to the young man already. Seeing how great the black-clothed young man was, the overgods from the empires and sects were nowhere near bold enough to charge up and confront him. They all avoided him. No one cared about the lives of the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Not to mention that many people struggled to even look after themselves in such a brutal battle. They were not in the mood to look out for others. Yang Kai did not choose to look back at this moment. He was far away, engaged in a battle against a late overgod that was just as powerful as him. The young man struck out once again. His single strike possessed extremely terrifying might. Demonic aura covered his hand as he extended it towards the top of Xian Dou's head with cold, killing intent. Xian Dou's expression changed drastically. He was heavily injured. As such, when he faced the young man's strike of death, he was out of power to stop it. At this moment, a streak of light shot over from afar. With surging sword chi, it moved extremely quickly like a bolt of lightning, heading directly towards the black-clothed young man. Before the sword had arrived, a cold strand of sword chi had already locked onto the young man beforehand, causing him to frown. His hand that had reached out towards Xian Dou's head paused as well before striking towards the sword chi with even greater force immediately. Boom! The black-clothed young man's body shook violently when the sword chi and his hand clashed. The demonic aura on his hand surged violently and dimmed. Vaguely, a bloody mark had appeared on his hand. It was quite a sight as blood oozed out. The young man's eyes narrowed, and he finally became slightly stern. He turned towards where the sword chi had come from. All he saw was Jian Chen covered in his protective light as he charged over aggressively. He gave off surging sword intent, which turned into a form of deterrence, causing many overgods from the Empyrean demon cult to avoid him. Go heal up in the fortress. Leave this person to me, Jian Chen said to Xian Dou and the others. He did not say too much before swinging his sword and shooting out a powerful strand of sword chi, engaging in a great battle with the young man. A set of gloves appeared on the young man's hands. They became completely covered as demonic aura surged. He began to fight Jian Chen as the power of laws condensed around his hands. The shockwaves from their battle were extremely violent. It flooded the entire battlefield, becoming the center of attention on the battlefield. It had even attracted the attention of the god kings from both sides. The young man really did possess extremely surprising strength. He was much more powerful than prodigies like Luo Yunfei, which stunned Jianqin. Originally, Jianqin only exhibited strength similar to Luo Yunfei's, but with the appearance of the young man, Jianqin was forced to reveal even more strength. Only then was he able to hold his ground against the young man. The demonic aura condensed on the young man's gloves was extremely dense and pure. Coupled with the power of laws, every time it clashed with Jianqin's startling rainbow sword, it would cause the sword chi on there to disperse slightly. In the end, he would only be able to use 80% of his strength. Even the laws of the sword were no exception. Clashing against the young man's laws, their strength would decrease as well. Laws of devouring. Jianqin immediately determined what kind of laws the young man had comprehended. The young man remained indifferent. He was extremely cold as he said, "You must be Jianqin, the person who's rumored to be able to make it onto the Overgod's plaque. You really do have some ability, but if you really want to make it on there, you need to defeat me first." With that, the might of the world suddenly appeared. A huge hole appeared behind the young man, producing a terrifying suction. Even the space in the surroundings became distorted. The surroundings immediately dimmed with the appearance of the hole. Even the streams of energy in the air became thinner, while the origin energy in a range of several dozen kilometers was completely drained in that instance. Not only could the hole devour light, but it could also devour all forms of energy as well. If you can block my strike, I'll admit that you possess the strength to make it onto the Overgod's plaque. If you can't, the person who defeated you is Xingluo, the young man said to Jianqin. As he extended a finger, the black hole behind him immediately surged towards Jianqin. Terrifying suction appeared and began to devour the laws of the sword that had condensed around Jianqin. Even Jianqin himself had been locked onto by a terrifying force of suction. He was pulled towards the black hole, which limited his movements as if he had fallen into mud. "Arg! I'm going to kill you to avenge my two juniors." Behind Jianqin, the female protector of the Earth Spirit sect with the fan who Jianqin had pinned to the city walls flew over with lightning speed. Her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared at the young man. Killing intent surged. The woman was only a mid-overgod, so someone as powerful as Xingluo did not even look at her. He completely focused his attention on Jianqin. Jianqin remained calm and did not pay attention to the woman with the fan either. The difference in strength was simply too great. Once she was within a certain range, just Xingluo's black hole would be enough to easily devour her. This would happen before she would have the opportunity to attack him. However, Jianqin had no good impression of the Earth Spirit sect. Naturally, he did not try to stop this woman who came to die. "Xingluo, it looks like you've already made it onto the Overgod's plaque. May I ask what your ranking is?" Jianqin asked calmly. He did not become flustered at all, remaining completely composed. He formed a seal with his hand, and a golden strand of sword chi condensed, shooting towards the black hole as a golden streak of light. At the same time, the woman with the fan charged over. Hatred filled her eyes, and it was almost to the point of insanity. A talisman silently appeared in her hand. It possessed complicated and profound inscriptions that sealed in great power. She directly threw the talisman. However, she did not throw it towards Xingluo, who had claimed the lives of her two juniors. Instead, it went towards Jianqin, who was fighting Xingluo. Jianqin sensed the woman's actions as soon as he had used the Daluo sword. His face immediately changed. However, it was too late. The talisman moved extremely quickly, arriving before Jianqin instantly. A great boom exploded. Tremendous, terrifying energy erupted like a volcano, and all of it rammed against Jianqin. Spurt! Jianqin vomited blood as he was blown away. His clothes had been reduced to dust at that moment, and even over 20 overgods around him vomited blood from the shockwave of energy. They were all blown away directly as well. Chapter 1921. Battle between God Kings. The talisman was simply too powerful, having exceeded Overgod and reached God King. It was equivalent to a strike from a god king, which was quite terrifying to overgods. Even though Jian Chen's chaotic body had reached the 11th layer, he would still become heavily injured from such a great attack if he was caught off guard. The golden sword Qi collided with Xing Luo's black hole at the same time. The two of them were actually equally matched, and they dispersed together. However, in the next moment, a shockwave from the talisman tore through the surroundings. It destroyed any residual power from the sword Qi and the black hole, sweeping out as a visible wave. All the overgods who encountered it were blown away. Xing Luo's expression changed as well. Demonic aura shrouded his body along with the laws of devouring. He retreated with lightning speed. However, even with that being the case, the shockwave still blew him away, reducing him to quite a horrible condition. All the god kings on the walls witnessed this. Anger filled the Grand Imperial Protector's face, and he yelled at the people from the Earth Spirit Sect. Earth Spirit Sect, you are despicable. In such an important situation, you would actually turn against the people on your side. You'd even go as far as to use a God King level talisman. Do you want to kill Jianchen? The three elders of the Earth Spirit Sect remained indifferent. Elder Mu said with a gruff voice, "Please do not blame us, Imperial Protector. This has nothing to do with us. It's all the traitorous disciple's own doing. We will definitely punish her heavily for this." All her own doing? Ha, great. All her own doing. With just that, you've shifted all the blame to your disciple. An elder from the Taoist sect of Calm Cloud sneered, "Even if you search through the entire Earth Spirit sect, you probably won't be able to find many talismans at that level. Do you think this female disciple would be bold enough to use such a precious talisman to kill a supreme overgod of the divine kingdom of Pingtian without your permission? Moreover, the talisman is so precious that it's impossible for a regular protector to possess it. Since your Taoist sect of Calm Clouds believes we are behind all of this, I hope you can provide evidence. If you can't, you're just spewing lies and tainting our name." An elder from the Earth Spirit sect rebuked as his gaze remained fixed in the direction where the talisman had exploded. "Earth Spirit sect, you've indeed gone too far this time. The talisman has injured quite a few of our people," said another god king. His face was sunken and very ugly, while his gaze towards the three elders of the Earth Spirit sect was extremely hostile. He was the elder of a powerful clan from the Divine Court Empire. There just happened to be overgods from his clan near the explosion, so they had suffered from it as well even though they were not targeted. The three elders of the Earth Spirit sect clasped their hands and apologized. They said they would compensate them in the future, and only then did the faces of the god kings from the various organizations take a better turn. Jian Qin is probably done for after taking on the full might of a god king level talisman. Although some prodigies on the Overgod's plaque can face off against god kings, that's only those who rank towards the very top and possess extremely shocking talent. Moreover, the god kings are only regular god kings, while the might of that talisman, what a pity. A talented person like Jianchen has fallen just like this before he can mature. Many of the god kings that stood on the wall's side while shaking their heads. Pity filled their faces. They did not believe that Jianchen could survive the attack from the talisman. The Grand Imperial Protector of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian rose up as soon as possible as well, directly shooting towards Jianchen's direction. He wanted to bring Jianchen back. "You must not, Imperial Protector." Immediately, a god king tried to the Grand Imperial Protector from acting, but he was ignored. Jianchen belonged to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Only the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian would suffer losses with his death. As a result, the other god kings could ignore his safety, but the Grand Imperial Protector could not. As a matter of fact, some of the other god kings secretly rejoiced when they saw this. They even hoped that Jianchen would be done for. The Divine Kingdom of Pingtian already possessed a primordial realm expert. If they gained another in the future, especially one who had been on the Overgod's plaque and even had a chance to make it onto the God King's throne, the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian would become greater than them. However, now that the Grand Imperial Protector had moved, the Empyrean Demon Cult's side would obviously not just stand by. If a God King charged into a battle between Overgods, there were too many uncertainties that could crop up. The Empyrean demon cult naturally did not wish for something like that to happen. Moreover, Sheng Luo was still on the battlefield. They could not allow anything to happen to him. As a result, as soon as the Grand Imperial Protector moved, a burly man appeared before him, blocking his path. Yan Wuming. The Grand Imperial Protector's face changed drastically when he saw this man. Yan Wuming smiled viciously. He did not say anything, directly hurling a punch at the Grand Imperial Protector. It was swift and straightforward, without any sloppiness at all. His simple punch possessed a devastating might. It was extremely terrifying, where space would distort wherever it passed by. Terrifying energy gathered in the fist, and just the pressure it gave off made the Grand Imperial Protector shiver. Yan Wuming was already a late God King. Moreover, he was the commander of the 9th Army, having defeated everyone in the Hall of Protectors to obtain the position. His strength was evident. Even the 9 God Kings Jian Chen had encountered in the Yin Mountains of Seven's despair paled in comparison. Oh no, Yan Wuming has entered the battle. The expressions of a few of the God Kings on the walls changed. The 2 subjects from the Heavenly Moon Empire immediately flew over to receive him. However, they were clearly too late. With a deep grunt, the Grand Imperial Protector became heavily injured from Yan Wuming's punch, spurting blood from his mouth. The 2 subjects from the Heavenly Moon Empire immediately tried to keep Yan Wuming busy so that the Grand Imperial Protector would have time to escape. The 2 subjects were also extremely powerful, but when they fought against Yan Wuming together, they still failed to gain the upper hand. Instead, they were suppressed by Yan Wuming. Haha, since you're so eager to fight, this king will play around with you lot. Laughter rang out from the Empyrean demon cult side. The commander of the 8th Army, Luo Duo, had taken part too. He smiled with bloodthirst. I'll test you out as well, Yashi Lian giggled. Her voice was filled with a sense of charm, which was enough to confuse and disorientate people. The Grand Imperial Protector's movements had caused a domino effect. At that moment, the God Kings on both sides began to fight as well. Aside from the 3 commanders, there were also a few God Kings from the Hall of Protectors. They were no weaker than the God Kings from the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. However, a battle between God Kings was just too devastating, not to mention it was a battle between so many God Kings. As a result, the God Kings of both sides all left the cloud plane and began fighting in outer space. If they were far enough away from the land, even the battles between primordial realm experts would not be able to impact anyone else. In the blink of an eye, all the God Kings on both sides had departed, only leaving behind a few overgods to lead the battle. Meanwhile, the Divine King and the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan, remained seated in outer space. A chessboard was placed between them, and the powerful shockwaves were unable to come into a range of 300 meters from them. At this moment, both of them were concentrating on the chessboard before them as if that was the center of their attention. Every tiny chess piece on the chessboard possessed the vital energies of the 2 primordial realm experts. On the surface, it only seemed like a game of chess, but in reality, it was another form of a battle. The calm surface hid unimaginable danger. Chapter 1922, Burning Fury. Many overgods naturally saw the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chen, being struck by the God King level talisman as well. Even though many of them believed that Jian Chen was already dead now, it did not cause too great of a disturbance to the battle. Overgods could die at any time in a large-scale battle between overgods. Even the death of a supreme overgod like Jian Chen would only lead to a few sighs among people. What a pity! Before we could even decide the victor, you're already dead, Sheng Luo said with pity. The shockwaves from the talisman had also struck him. However, since he was far away enough and most of the might landed on Jian Chen, he did not become injured. Jian Chen, let's see how you'll survive that? The woman with the fan who dealt the attack to Jian Chen had already backed out of the battle now. She stared at where Jian Chen was before coldly. His demise delighted her. Haha, don't you have the strength to make it onto the overgod's plaque? But so what? You still died to my hands in the end. Even though the talisman came from Master and killing you was the intentions of Master and the other 2 elders, You can't change the fact that you died to my hands. You'll pay a price for offending our Earth Spirit sect, even if you're a supreme God King, let alone a supreme overgod, the woman with the fan sneered. When she thought about how she personally killed a supreme overgod and eliminated someone she completely hated, she felt utter delight. However, her smile suddenly froze. Her eyes widened as if she had just witnessed something unbelievable. She became completely stunned. A bloody body gradually rose up from the center of the battlefield between the overgods. Blood covered his face, so it was difficult to distinguish his identity. However, powerful sword chi radiated from him, along with extremely great killing intent. The killing intent was so powerful that the world seemed to pale and origin energy seemed to tremble. The overgods who fought in the center were all surprised as they revealed expressions of angst. It's Jian Qin. Heavens, the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan is actually still alive. How is that possible? Being hit by a God King level talisman is akin to enduring a direct attack from a God King, yet the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan has still managed to survive. A hubbub immediately rose up in the surroundings. If Jian Qin had really died, people would not have reacted so violently because that was what was supposed to happen according to their beliefs. However, he had actually managed to survive. He was only injured after enduring a God King strike as an overgod. This shocked everyone, filling them with disbelief. Impossible. This is impossible. How is he still alive? Being struck by a God King level talisman while being caught off guard actually failed to kill him. How is this possible? The woman with the fan had already retreated to the walls of the fortress. When she saw Jian Qin rise up into the sky once again, she became completely astounded. At that moment, Jian Qin's killing intent was so powerful that it was truly terrifying. Just the killing intent had formed a deterrence, causing all the overgods of the Empyrean demon cult to back away from him. Even though many people knew that Jian Qin was heavily injured, the killing intent had surprised them all. As a result, none of them were willing to get anywhere near Jian Qin. They did not dare to attack Jian Qin either. Earth Spirit Sect. Jian Qin stared at the woman with the fan on the walls firmly as he said these words through gritted teeth. His voice was extremely gruff. He was fighting against a supreme overgod of the Empyrean demon cult, stopping him from killing more experts on their side. Not only did that save the people of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, but it would also allow the people from the other organizations to avoid dying to Xing Luo's hand. However, at such a crucial time, he had never expected that someone on his side would deal a sneak attack to him, making him endure the might of a God King unexpectedly. It would not have been too big of a deal if the Earth Spirit sect had launched a sneak attack against him at other times, but really, now of all times? With an opponent as powerful as the Empyrean demon cult before them, there were actually still people who did not see the bigger picture and turned on their own people. This made Jian Qin furious. Anger burned within him, to the point where he felt like he wanted to destroy everything. Something like this could never be forgiven. In the next moment, Jian Qin directly turned into a streak of light. He did not continue killing the people of the Empyrean demon cult. Instead, he directly charged for the walls, heading towards the woman with the fan. Her actions had completely infuriated Jian Qin, to the point where Jian Qin wanted to kill her regardless of the circumstances, situation, and even consequences. If he did not kill her, how was he supposed to vent his anger? How was he supposed to calm down? Calm down, Patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. Patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, please remain level-headed. You must look at the bigger picture. You can't act purely on impulse. Many overgods from the powerful organizations communicated with Jian Qin secretly. Now that they faced a powerful enemy, not only would turning on each other lower their morale, but the effects would be drastic as well. Protector Gong and Protector Wu from the Earth Spirit sect stopped Jian Qin in the first moment. They bellowed at him, Patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, what are you doing instead of killing the enemies? The two of them spoke righteously, completely ignoring the fact that their junior had just dealt a sneak attack to Jian Qin. Piss off! Jian Qin did not waver at all and roared out. His shockingly sharp gaze was filled with killing intent as the startling rainbow sword danced, emitting a blinding strand of sword chi. The sword chi's might did not weaken at all. Instead, it was even more powerful compared to before. Protector Gong and Protector Wu were already heavily injured. They were not the opponent of such a powerful strand of sword chi. Just that bisected them along the waist. "Who dares to stop me?" Jian Chen roared out and opened a path with his startling rainbow sword. He directly killed his way towards the woman with the fan as fury burned within him. At that moment, Jian Chen seemed to become an angry beast. He was even more powerful than before he was injured, making him unstoppable. Overgods both on his side and against him in his path stood aside as they stared at Jian Chen in complete fear. Heavens, is the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan really injured? Why do I feel like he's much more terrifying than before he was injured? Is he injured at all? Many overgods were shocked as they fought and observed Jian Chen at the same time. "Junior Chen, run!" Protector Wu and Protector Gong called out to the woman from afar. However, as soon as they had said that, a few overgods from the Empyrean demon cult encircled them. Demonic aura surged, and their heads were smashed to pieces, wiping out their souls. Protector Wu and Protector Gong both died to the hands of the Empyrean demon cult. Meanwhile, the woman with the fan had already become pale-faced. Her body trembled as she stood on the walls, while her gaze towards Jian Chen was filled with fear. Immediately, she took out a teleportation formation disc and activated it as quickly as possible. White light surrounded her, and she disappeared instantly. Boom! Just when the woman had fled, a powerful strand of sword chi shot over, directly landing where she had stood before, creating a great sound. Jian Chen hovered before the walls as he stared at where the woman had stood before. His face was extremely sunken. Suddenly, he swept his gaze through the battlefield and stared at the other disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. The light in his eyes flickered. There were a lot more than 7 overgods that had come from the Earth Spirit sect to provide support. The 7 overgods who attacked the provincial city of the Dong'an province were only disciples of Elder Mu. All the elders who had come brought a few of their disciples with them. Right now, he was considering if he should kill the disciples of the other 2 elders. When the woman with the fan had caught him off guard, she had used a God King level talisman, and Protector Wu and Protector Gong had even blocked him when he tried to kill her. Jian Chen refused to believe that this had nothing to do with the elders of the Earth Spirit sect. As a result, Jian Chen felt bitter hatred for the Earth Spirit sect. He was tempted to kill all the disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. Chapter 1923, Sheng Luo's Identity. Jian Chen, don't get carried away. After the battle, I swear I will make the Earth Spirit sect give you an explanation for what they have done. The matter at hand, however, is to stop the Empyrean demon cult. With the enemies right before us, we are in no shape to deal with troubles among ourselves. It will only create confusion, which will only be detrimental. Just when Jian Chen was hesitating over whether to vent his anger on the other people from the Earth Spirit sect or not, he heard the Divine King's voice. Jian Chen looked back and stared at the Divine King, who was playing chess against Huayan. He could clearly sense 2 devastating energies clashing on the chessboard. Jian Chen sucked in a deep breath and slowly dismissed his killing intent. He tried his best to calm down his anger as he thought to himself, "Your Majesty, since you've already promised me that you'll make the Earth Spirit sect provide me with a satisfying explanation, I'd like to see how they do that. I'll let that woman live a few days longer for now." In the end, Jian Chen did not end up turning on his allies. However, he firmly remembered the grievance he experienced today. On the battlefield below, the war was extremely intense. Many overgods had died, so there were even more casualties among the ordinary soldiers. The ground had become scarlet red as far as the eye could see, while corpses were littered across the ground. Blood formed streams as the smell of iron filled the air. Severed limbs covered the land, which formed an extremely horrific sight. The 3 armies of the Empyrean demon cult relied on their formations, constructing each one from 10,000 people. 30 of these huge formations faced off against the huge armies of soldiers from the divine kingdom of Pingtian in an intense battle. With over 100 million soldiers, the divine kingdom of Pingtian possessed an absolute numerical advantage when faced against just 300,000 troops. However, when the battle actually happened, it was one-sided. It was not the huge armies of the divine kingdom of Pingtian that possessed the advantage, but the armies of the Empyrean demon cult that only numbered 300,000. The three armies rampaged through the soldiers of the divine kingdom, encountering little resistance. Bodies were blown to pieces wherever they went as miserable cries constantly rang out, leaving behind a ground full of corpses. Even though the armies of the divine kingdom also fell into formations, the 10,000-man formations of the Empyrean demon cult were on a completely different level. Not to mention that just the individual strengths of the soldiers were on a completely different level. Countless soldiers poured large quantities of divine crystals into the formations on the walls of the fortress, activating them all. They shot out beams of white light that crisscrossed with each other, constantly attacking the armies of the Empyrean demon cult. Even though quite a few people had died to the formations of the fortress, the three armies of the Empyrean demon cult were still able to maintain their tremendous formations without them. Even though they became weaker, they were still invincible like before. Sacred Feather, Houston, Ruijin, Honglien, Heiyu, as well as the gods who came from the powerful clans of the provincial city gathered together. They looked after each other as they worked with many other gods to stop a single 10,000-man formation. Gods died at every moment. Even 2 gods from the Dongan province had passed away, while a few more were injured. Sacred Feather and Houston displayed extraordinary strength. As late gods, the battle prowess they displayed was no less than regular overgods. They played a crucial and decisive role in stopping a 10,000-man formation. Ruijin, Honglien, and Heiyu all wore armor as they wielded saint artifacts, attacking as hard as they could. They displayed their strength without holding back at all, transforming into their original forms. A dragon and a phoenix worked together with an alligator. However, even with that being the case, the 3 of them were heavily injured and covered in blood. They were covered in vicious wounds. Even though Sacred Feather and Houston possessed extraordinary strength, they were unable to remain unscathed during such a large battle. They had also become heavily injured. Suddenly, all the people in the 10,000-man formation poured their power together, creating a huge black spear. It radiated with a terrifying might as it shot towards Sacred Feather, who stood out the most. Originally, the attacks from the 10,000-men formations were rather scattered. They would attack many targets at the same time, so the people on the Divine Kingdom's side were just enough to fend them off. However, now that the formation had suddenly gathered all its strength in one location and attacked a single person, its might was extremely terrifying. It had reached the peak of Overgod. The black spear was enough to kill Overgods easily. Even a prodigy like Luo Yunfei would try to avoid being hit directly. "Be careful," Houston called out. The strike was just too terrifying. Sacred Feather was basically doomed if it struck him. Sacred Feather also became extremely stern. He experienced a great sense of danger. The attack had already locked onto his presence, so he was unable to avoid it at all. At this moment, a cold voice rang out. Jian Qin, still bloodied, descended from the sky and stood before Sacred Feather. He directly threw his startling rainbow sword at the attack. Swish! The startling rainbow sword collided viciously against the black spear with devastating chaotic force while being covered by the laws of the sword. With a boom, the black spear was reduced to pieces by the startling rainbow sword. With a hand gesture, the startling rainbow sword flew back to Jian Chen's hand as a streak of light. He wielded the sword as he radiated with terrifying battle intent as he directly charged at the 10,000-man formation. "I have to destroy their formations, or there'll be countless casualties on our side," thought Jian Chen. The 10,000-man formations were just too powerful. Even prodigies like Luo Yunfei needed to work together to destroy them. However, right now, all the overgods on both sides were busy engaging in an intense battle. There was no one who could break free from their battle on the Divine Kingdom's side. Even if they could break free, the overgods from the Empyrean demon cult would stop them. Seeing how there was an overgod who wanted to destroy the formations, some of the overgods from the Empyrean demon cult wanted to stop him. However, when they saw it was Jianchen, they immediately became timid, and they did not dare to charge up. Even a few late overgods were unwilling to try to stop Jianchen. They just watched him attack the formation. Sheng Luo stood towards the back of the battlefield. Across the great crowd of people, he stared at Jianchen as he felt uneasy. I never thought I'd actually meet such a great prodigy on the cloud plane. He endured an attack equivalent to a God King's strike, yet he's actually still so powerful. Sheng Luo was secretly surprised. He was a supreme overgod who had made it onto the overgod's plaque, with his name clearly engraved on it, yet he discovered there was actually still quite a large difference between him and Jianchen. This Jianchen is still hiding some strength. You are nowhere close to being his opponent right now. Let's go. This is the end of your training on the cloud plane. Let's go check out some other planes. The other branches of our cult also have wars on other planes. It's said that a supreme overgod has appeared on the He plane as well, and he's 5 rankings higher than you on the overgod's plaque. Fighting him should produce even more evident results in your training. Silently, a middle-aged man in black clothes appeared beside Sheng Luo. He seemed quite dignified, but his appearance was extremely ordinary. He said these words to Sheng Luo indifferently. Are you saying that Jianchen is not using his full strength right now? Sheng Luo asked in surprise. The middle-aged man nodded. I only sensed his strength when he fended off the talisman earlier. That's right, Jianchen is extremely powerful. At the very least, he's someone who can claim to be invincible among overgods. There's probably no one who can beat him as long as God Kings don't appear. There's quite a great difference between you and him. The middle-aged man paused there before continuing. However, don't become depressed. You can't forget that you're the Grand Elder's disciple. With his nurturing and the resources of the Empyrean demon cult, your future is limitless. Moreover, the cultivation method you practice directly comes from the Great Elder. If you can reach the 9th layer on that, you'll be able to match the current Jianchen. With that, Sheng Luo stared at Jianchen as his eyes became filled with powerful battle intent. He said, Jianchen, I will remember you. I will fight against you again in the future. Chapter 1924. Unstoppable Sacred Feather, Houston, Ruijin, Hong Lian, Heiyu, and the other gods from the Dong'an province all stood behind Jianchen. Jianchen stood with his sword, standing before them all with his rather slender body. No matter how great the ripples of energy were, they were unable to move him at all. At that moment he seemed extraordinarily stalwart. Even though he was covered in blood, it was not enough to hide his invincible, fearless might. He turned into a streak of light and directly blocked a 10,000-man formation from the Empyrean demon cult with his monstrous power. Demonic aura immediately surged from the formation when they saw Jianchen charge over all by himself. The vitality of the soldiers fused into one as they all poured their energy into the formation. After the formation amplified and converted it, the energy turned into an extremely thick beam of black light. Boom! The sword chi on the startling rainbow sword seemed to explode, colliding with the black beam of light. Jianchen's strike dispersed the beam of energy, turning into terrifying energy that wreaked havoc in the surroundings. Jianchen remained as still as a mountain within the storm of energy. His presence rose once again after dealing out that strike. Right now, he was like an injured beast, making him extraordinarily scary. The more he fought, the braver he became. In reality, he was just slowly releasing his strength. The huge formation before him shook violently. Not only did they come to a halt, but they even staggered back as the powerful shockwaves rammed into the formation heavily. Jianchen strode through the air, moving against the violent streams of energy. He directly stabbed out, making his sword shine brilliantly and radiate with sword chi. The sword directly cut through the energy, striking the formation without weakening at all. The strike's might was extremely great, enough to cause countless overgods to pale. Vaguely, it seemed to have exceeded overgod and reached a higher level. Immediately, the 10,000-man formation shook violently after enduring Jian Chen's strike. The formation scroll they collectively controlled even began to flicker. Over half of the people in the formation vomited blood, becoming heavily injured. Jian Chen had directly heavily injured several thousand people with that strike. It was so powerful that many of the overgods in the battle could not help but feel secretly surprised. How is the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan so terrifying? This has completely exceeded Luo Yunfei's strength. He endured the attack from a God King level talisman earlier. Look at him, covered in blood. He must be extremely heavily injured. But why is he still so powerful? Is the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan an overgod or a God King? At this moment, the overgods in the sky began to observe Jian Chen, regardless of which side they stood for. The overgods that belonged to the Empyrean demon cult secretly panicked. Before the battle, their commanders had warned them specifically to protect the formations. Once overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian tried to attack the formations, they had to stop them. This was because once the formation was broken, the might of the army would plummet. In the end, it would lead to a large number of deaths. However, when they saw how powerful Jian Chen was, they all shivered in fear. None of them were bold enough to try to stop Jian Chen. Sending one or two prodigies that were on par to Luo Yunfei would just be sending them to their deaths, and they were unable to immediately free up more people than that. Boom! Jian Chen struck the 10,000-man formation again. Immediately, the formation trembled violently. All the soldiers in the formation constantly vomited blood and more than half of them had become haggard. Jian Chen was just too powerful. The 10,000 soldiers were deities at the very least, with a few of them being gods, yet they actually struggled to endure Jian Chen's attacks. Oh no, the 6th Squadron is in danger. We need to support them immediately. Sensing the danger, a few of the nearby formations gathered towards the region. Demonic aura churned as they charged over aggressively. Jian Chen did not give them the time to catch their breath, let alone an opportunity to save them. The startling rainbow sword shone brightly and conjured 300-meter-long beams of light that all struck the formation. The 3 attacks followed each other almost perfectly. The first strike directly caused the formation to sink into the ground. The formation shook violently, almost approaching the limit of what it could withstand. The second strike directly made the formation show signs of shattering. It became riddled with cracks while the powerful residual sword chi passed through. It cut through the air like rain, claiming over 1,000 lives. The third strike finally destroyed the formation, causing it to shatter loudly. Over half of the soldiers who were part of the formation died to Jian Chen's attack, leaving only 2,000 or 3,000 of them alive now. They were all heavily injured, without any exception at all. In the sky, all the overgods became stunned. Jian Chen had managed to break through a formation in just a few moves with lightning speed, and he even killed off over half of the people there. His battle prowess was so great that it deeply shocked them all. After the formation broke, the formation scroll in the center actually rose up by itself before transforming into a blur and flying off into the distance with unbelievable speed. It vanished in a split second. Jian Chen became stunned because he was just about to collect the formation scroll. He stared in the direction where it had flown off as he became speechless. It was just too surprising. He had never thought that the formation scroll would actually escape by itself and at such speed. This should be a protective measure the Empyrean demon cult cast down on the formation scrolls, Jian Chen thought. The light in his eyes flickered. Then he charged towards a second formation. Now, the 3 armies of the Empyrean demon cult had understood Jian Chen's power. They did not dare to face off against him alone. Immediately, 3 formations worked together, surrounding Jian Chen in a triangular formation. They used all the power in the formation to attack Jian Chen. However, Jian Chen's power had already reached a whole new level. Even when he did not use his full strength, 3 formations could not deal with him. As a matter of fact, even just keeping him busy for a while was difficult. In a few moves, there was a boom, and Jian Chen destroyed a second formation. Thousands of deities died to him, while the formation scroll shot off by itself as well. However, Jianchen was prepared this time. As soon as the formation scroll wanted to fly off, he formed a seal with his hand and used the linear lightning release. He turned into a bolt of lightning and pursued it. The formations were extraordinary. They could actually unleash the might of a peak over God when deities poured their strength together, and they could both defend and attack. If he could get one of these formation scrolls, it would hold great significance to the Tianyuan clan. It could become a clan treasure. Chapter 1925. A God King's ambush. Jianchen departed from the battlefield as he pursued the formation scroll. However, now that Jianchen had destroyed two 10,000-man formations and killed at least 10,000 of the Emperorian demon cult soldiers, he had greatly relieved the pressure on the divine kingdom of Pingtian. It allowed them to mobilize even more gods to stop the remaining 10,000-man formations. Jianchen used the linear lightning release on some grassy plains far away from the battlefield. He had already caught up to the formation scroll that had fled by itself, and he directly grabbed it tightly. Clearly, the Emperorian demon cult had set up defenses for the formation scroll. The moment he grabbed it, powerful energy immediately leaked out in an attempt to break free from Jianchen's grasp. At the same time, there seemed to be a mysterious force that pulled the formation scroll along. Even though Jianchen gripped it tightly in his hand, it did not stop, and it basically dragged Jianchen along into the distance. It moved extremely quickly, crossing a great distance in a single instance. In just that short moment, Jianchen was drawn far away from the battlefield. However, he did not give up. He had to get the formation scroll. Powerful chaotic force began to radiate from his hand with the presence of destruction, firmly surrounding the formation scroll in his hand. At the same time, the laws of the sword condensed in the surroundings and revolved around Jianchen. Through chaotic force and the power of laws, Jianchen managed to suppress the power from the formation scroll completely. Finally, the formation scroll's resistance grew weaker and weaker before completely vanishing. It laid in Jianchen's hand quietly as if it had lost all of its power. However, Jianchen still did not drop his guard. He had never seen a formation scroll that could run away by itself. He kept the chaotic force and the laws of the sword around it just in case. At this moment, Jianchen's face changed slightly. He suddenly raised his head towards the sky. A few formation banners descended rapidly as streaks of light in the sky, forming a great formation around him in a split second. It covered a region of 10,000 kilometers, locking down the space around Jianchen and trapping him there. The scene around Jianchen immediately changed when the formation was activated. It turned into a desert filled with yellow sand that extended as far as the eye could see. At the same time, a blade that shone with great resplendence suddenly appeared behind Jianchen. Terrifying energy was compressed into the blade. It possessed the power to cut through space, cleaving towards Jianchen's head mercilessly. Not only was the strike fast, but it was also accurate and vicious. It wanted to slice Jianchen's soul to pieces in a single blow. Moreover, the energy within it was tremendous and extremely terrifying, and it made even space distort. The blade basically appeared at the same time as when the formation had activated. The enemy wanted to claim Jianchen's life by catching him off guard. However, Jianchen was far greater than he ever was in the past. He was already on guard when he saw the formation banners descend from the sky. A gleam of light shone through his eyes as he became extremely stern. He did not hesitate at all. A large quantity of chaotic force surged out from his chaotic Niden, filling every inch of his body as he pushed the power of his chaotic body to its absolute limit. At the same time, chaotic force seemed to burn on his startling rainbow sword. Along with the power of laws, he slashed behind him without any hesitation at all. Jianchen understood just how powerful the ambusher was, so he used his full strength in the strike without hiding anything at all. Finally, at this moment, he revealed the strength of the 11th layer of the chaotic body. Boom! The startling rainbow sword collided with the glowing bolt. Just like the collision between two comets, a great explosion erupted. Terrifying energy surged into the surroundings, causing the space there to twist heavily. Jian Chen drifted backwards after the strike as blood oozed from the corner of his mouth. He had endured a strike from a God King level talisman after being caught off guard earlier, so he was already injured. Even though he had suppressed the wounds, he had not recovered from them yet. Now, he had clashed with such a powerful expert. Naturally, it would affect the condition of his body and worsen his injuries. As a result, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Like a leaf, Jian Chen only stopped after drifting several hundred meters away. His face was emotionless as he stared coldly ahead. A man who wielded a blade appeared there silently. He wore a mask. The mask produced a strange pulse. Not only did it block senses of the soul, but it also hid the presence of the wearer. As for the person's strength, he was a true God King. A God King was an expert who had reached the apex in a divine kingdom. Their status was extremely great, and they would be venerated by all. Even in those ancient empires, God Kings were people who could act as they wished. They were subjects to imperial families, and in large sects like the Earth Spirit sect, they were elders who held authority. You're not a part of the Empyrean demon cult. Or you. Jian Chen hovered in the air and spat out a bloody mess. He silently circulated his chaotic force to heal as he stared at the person before him. The person did not practice a cultivation method from the Empyrean demon cult. In addition, even if the God Kings of the Empyrean demon cult wanted to kill him, there was no need to conceal their appearance. As a result, he was certain that the person before him was a God King on his side. Seeing how he even concealed his presence, he was clearly worried he would be recognized if it leaked out. The mysterious God King's mask revealed a pair of eyes that were filled with shock. He stared at Jian Chen and said, "I've underestimated you. I never thought you'd actually be so powerful. You've received an attack from me up front, and you've only suffered some small injuries. As for my identity, there's no need for you to know. All you need to know is that I'm here to kill you." The masked God King no longer said anything else. He appeared before Jian Chen like he had teleported as he swung the blade with tremendous energy towards Jian Chen's head. He wanted to end the battle in a single stroke and kill Jian Chen cleanly. Jian Chen roared out. His hair fluttered from his surging presence alone. He unleashed his full strength to receive the attack. The trapping formation had already enveloped the space, locking down the region. It had turned into a firm jail, so Jian Chen was unable to escape at all. As a result, all he could do was put his all into the battle. Jian Chen had already equipped his God artifact armor. He needed to use everything he had when he faced a God King while injured. He could not afford to hide anything. Daluo sword. Jian Chen used the Daluo sword right from the start. Not only did the golden sword chi contain his comprehension of the laws of the sword, but it also contained the power from the 11th layer of his chaotic body. As a result, the sword chis might surpass the limits of Overgod and reached God King in the end. Faced with Jian Chen's surprising attack, the masked God King became shocked. He could clearly sense just how powerful the sword chi was. He could not help but become amazed. Was this the power an Overgod was supposed to possess? However, even though Jian Chen's strength astounded him, he did not show any mercy at all. The blade in his hand collided with the golden sword chi with devastating power. Chapter 1926. The Ambusher. With a loud boom, a single strike from the masked God King dispersed Jian Chen's golden sword chi. Space trembled as energy rampaged. A light flickered around the masked God King. He used the power of laws to protect himself, easily enduring the shockwave from the attack. He immediately dealt out a second strike after the first. He charged at Jian Chen with lightning speed as terrifying energy condensed on his blade. He swung it as the power of laws revolved around it. Jian Chen's eyes shone, and his gaze became extremely sharp as if sword chi shot out from them. It was shocking. Chaotic force permeated his surroundings. Not only did he experience no fear when faced against a God King, but his battle intent surged instead. He roared out and directly charged up with the startling rainbow sword, engaging in a battle with the masked God King. Jian Chen was extremely powerful after breaking through to the 11th layer. He was invincible amongst overgods. Even when he faced this God King, he was able to put up a fight despite being injured. The two of them fought with great intensity, to the point where even the sun dimmed. The great shockwaves of energy rampaged through the formation space, causing it to shake. The masked God King became more shocked and filled with disbelief the more they fought. Jian Chen's strength had completely exceeded anything he had expected. Not only did Jian Chen manage to continue fighting on equal terms after so long, but he even fought more and more viciously as time went on. The blood on Jian Chen did not even seem like it came from him. He was clearly very heavily injured, but he did not seem like that at all. His presence did not weaken even in the slightest. The reason why Jian Chen possesses such terrifying battle prowess is all because of that strange energy. What is that energy for it to be so powerful? He's clearly not a God King, yet he can hold his ground against one. What outstanding cultivation method do you need to be able to cultivate such great energy? The masked God King thought quickly. At that moment, he felt extremely curious about Jian Chen's cultivation method. I can't drag it out any longer. I must finish the battle fast, just in case something happens. The masked God King began to panic slightly when he saw how he could not defeat Jian Chen after quite a while. He immediately made up his mind and used a battle skill. Suddenly, the might of the world descended. The masked God King raised his blade high over his head as endless energy condensed rapidly. Terrifying pressure filled the surroundings, causing space to thicken. In just a short instance, the God King had charged up his battle skill. He directly swung his blade that had extremely terrifying power at Jian Chen. The surroundings seemed to dim when he struck out. The energy on the blade transformed into a mighty torrent that directly surged towards Jian Chen with devastating power. The strike was extremely frightening. Wherever it passed by, space would distort and origin energy would disperse. Space seemed like it was about to rip at any time. A huge, bottomless chasm had even appeared on the ground. Jian Chen became extremely serious. A God King using a battle skill was so powerful that he experienced great danger. Tai sword technique. Jian Chen formed a seal with his hand, and he fused with his sword. He shot off as a huge, resplendent streak of sword qi. At the same time, a finger-sized strand of sword qi suddenly appeared over his head. As soon as the sword qi appeared, it radiated with shocking sword intent, making it extremely frightening. However, the battle skill the masked God King used possessed the might of the world, so the sword qi did not stand out much. Boom! A God King's battle skill was just too powerful. The two attacks collided, and Jian Chen was sent flying as blood spurted from his mouth. A white mark had appeared on the armor he was wearing. Even though the armor no longer possessed the powers of a god artifact, it was still tough. As a result, even a battle skill from a God King was unable to damage it at all. However, all the force within the strike was transmitted into Jian Chen's body. Just that worsened Jian Chen's wounds. However, at the moment the two attacks clashed, the tiny strand of sword qi above Jian Chen's head turned into a streak of white light that punched through the storm of energy at a speed even faster than lightning. It headed directly towards the God King's forehead. The sword qi moved just too quickly. It used the might of the battle skill and the rampaging energy as a cover, so the masked God King failed to notice it at first. As a result, it was too late when he noticed it. Spurt! The sword qi directly shot into the masked God King's forehead, leaving behind a bloody hole. Arg! The masked God King shrieked out in pain while the might of a God King condensed around him dispersed at that moment. Even his blade fell to the ground. He clutched his head with both hands as he shrieked out in excruciating pain while his face became extremely pale. The mask on his face shattered with a clink, revealing an old face. He was an old man, and his face was covered in wrinkles. However, the muscles on his face were all distorted as the pain from his soul made his body tremble violently. I never thought his soul would remain intact after taking on a strand of profound sword qi. God Kings really are powerful. Jian Chen climbed to his feet in the distance with a pale face. He silently circulated his chaotic force as he made his way towards the God King slowly. Blood constantly dripped from his body, leaving behind a blood trail as he advanced. Very soon, Jianchen arrived before the shrieking God King. However, when he saw the God King's appearance, he was stunned at first. Then, his face then became extremely cold. Originally, he believed the God King who had ambushed him was one of the elders from the Earth Spirit sect. After all, he had completely fallen out with the Earth Spirit sect after the woman with the fan launched a sneak attack against him. As a result, it made sense if the elders of the Earth Spirit sect wanted to kill him. However, he had never thought that the God King who trapped him here first before trying to kill him would actually be this person. I have no grievances with your Taoist sect of calm clouds. Why do you want to kill me? Jianchen stared at the old man coldly as he spoke with a very frigid voice. The old man was one of the elders from the Taoist sect of calm clouds. Jianchen had many guesses as to who the God King was. He had considered the possibility that he was not from the Earth Spirit sect and from some other organization instead. However, he had never thought it would be an elder of the Taoist sect of calm clouds. In the main hall before, the Taoist sect of calm clouds were the only people who appeared amiable to him. They even stood on his side to discredit the elders of the Earth Spirit sect. Chapter 1927. Slaying the God King. Tell me, why do you want to kill me even though I have no grievances with the Taoist sect of calm clouds? You even used a God King level trapping formation to cut off all chances of me escaping. You want to kill me no matter what? Jianchen growled. His voice was extremely cold as killing intent and fury built up inside him. The God King trying to kill him did not come from the Earth Spirit sect, nor did he come from some other organization. Instead, he came from the Taoist sect of calm clouds that had behaved most amiably to him. This was just too surprising. By now, the elder of the Taoist sect of calm clouds had already suppressed the heart-wrenching pain from his soul. After he realized that Jianchen had learned his identity, his face immediately became extremely ugly. At the same time, he felt much disbelief. He had never thought that not only would he fail to kill Jianchen with his strength, but he would even end up heavily injured with his identity exposed instead. After all, he was not someone who had just become a God King. Instead, he had remained as an early God King for over 100,000 years, reaching the peak of early God King. He was about to break through to mid-God King. Jianchen, since you already know who I am, there's no need to say anything else. Let's fight. The only way you can leave this place today is by killing me, the God King said coldly. He took out a pill from his space ring as quickly as possible and ingested it before attacking Jianchen again with his blade. My identity has been exposed. I have to kill Jianchen today no matter what. The elder made up his mind about killing Jianchen when he struck out. If his identity had not been exposed, he still could have chosen to retreat. However, he could not choose to retreat now. Otherwise, there would be endless problems. He did not possess a body as tough as Jianchen's. Now that his soul was injured, his battle prowess was directly affected as well. He was no longer as powerful as he was during his peak. Jianchen channeled his chaotic force as he guarded his body with light. The startling rainbow sword exploded brightly as he engaged the elder of the Taoist sect of calm clouds. In comparison to the injured elder, Jianchen's battle prowess did not weaken at all. Even though his wounds were very deep and he was covered in blood, he had the support of the chaotic body, which allowed him to unleash his full strength even when heavily wounded. Jianchen repelled the elder's attacks as he ingested a soul recovery pill quickly to replenish the power of his soul he had expended when he used the profound sword chi. Although he could send out 2 strands of profound sword chi each time, the power in his soul would be drained clean if he did that. At such a time, he would be reduced to his weakest state. If he could not kill the God King with that, he would definitely become the person who died instead. As a result, Jianchen was only bold enough to use a single strand of profound sword chi. He needed to recover 80% of the power of his soul before he would use the second strand. You want to kill me for my cultivation method, right? Jianchen yelled at the elder from the Taoist sect of calm clouds. Their battle was extremely intense, where energy rampaged through the air like waves. It was extremely ferocious. Both of them received wounds of varying deepnesses. The elder's blade struck Jianchen multiple times, to the point where Jianchen would spit blood. His organs had been shaken to pieces. The elder from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds had also received rather heavy wounds. His body was covered with vicious slashes while he had also been impaled in the chest. His blood scattered across the sky. Every single drop of it gave off powerful pulses of energy. However, as the battle went on, the elder's wounds rapidly worsened, causing his battle prowess to become weaker and weaker. The piercing pain from his soul affected him greatly. If he were not a god king and possessed an extremely powerful soul, just the strand of profound sword chi would have been enough to claim his life. Suddenly, the elder bellowed out. Invisible flames seemed to sprout up from his body, causing his presence to rapidly increase. He had chosen to burn his vitality for greater strength. At the same time, he used a battle skill again. He used his blade to cut through space as a blur, swinging it towards Jianchen with the might of the world. At the same time, he said coldly, "We're just shifting the blame of your death to the Earth Spirit sect. Once you're dead, no one will think it was our Taoist sect of Calm Clouds that killed you. They'll only think of the Earth Spirit sect. But don't worry, Jianchen. Although you're going to die to my hands today, our Taoist sect of Calm Clouds will work with the divine kingdom of Pingtian to attack the Earth Spirit sect together in the future. It'll be like avenging you. Is that the case? However, I won't let the schemes of your Taoist sect of Calm Clouds succeed. I will deal with my own grievances with the Earth Spirit sect. There's no need for your sect to interfere," Jianchen said coldly. At this moment, he had just replenished all the power of his soul he consumed through the profound sword chi using the soul recovery pill. Seeing the elder's blade approach him with the might of a battle skill, Jianchen suddenly put the armor on him away. He used his body to endure the devastating strike while he pushed the defense of his chaotic body to its limits. Spurt! Blood splashed as the blade passed through Jianchen's body with frightening power. The power had almost cleaved Jianchen in half, causing him to constantly spit blood while his face became extremely pale. Moreover, a great power that belonged to a god king rapidly spread through his body. It directly headed towards his soul, wanting to destroy it. Jianchen coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood, but his lips curled into a cold smile very soon. With a thought, surging sword intent suddenly appeared, and the finger-sized profound sword chi appeared above his head once again. However, there was not just a single strand this time but two. The elder's soul was already injured. Coupled with the burning of his vitality, his soul had become even weaker. Jianchen refused to believe he had the ability to take on the two strands and survive. Jianchen did not feel completely confident about killing a god king with a single strand of profound sword chi, but he did when he used two strands. The elder of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds sensed the danger when he saw the strands of profound sword chi, and his face suddenly changed. However, he did not have the time to react at all. The two strands of profound sword chi shot out at the same, disappearing into his forehead. The elder's body immediately shuddered violently while his weakened soul directly shattered from the two strands of profound sword chi. It dispersed into the surroundings, having been wiped out. A god king died just like that, slain by an overgod. At the same time, the power of Jianchen's soul was completely depleted. He felt the world spin around him as he felt drowsy. Then he collapsed onto the ground powerlessly. His chest heaved heavily. The God King's power continued to rampage within him, directly surging towards his soul. Jianchen closed his eyes as he laid on the ground powerlessly. He used the last of his willpower to control his chaotic force in resistance, wiping out as much of the power as he could. Boom! At this moment, with a loud sound, the trapping formation the elders of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds set down shattered. A woman in a green dress slowly walked over from outside. The woman was not old. She only seemed to be in her 20s. She possessed an alluring beauty, where every action and word from her possessed a fatal level of charm. In particular, the light in her eyes constantly changed. At times, it was gentle like water, charming and extremely pleasant as if it could melt the hearts of all men. At other times, it was extraordinarily cold, like the unmeltable polar ice caps, filled with heavy killing intent to the point where it was impossible to stare into them directly. Jianchen opened his eyes as he laid on the ground. When he saw the woman, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and he cried out inside, "Commander of the 7th Army, Yashi Lian. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.